Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice Podcast channel. Tonight we step into Galveston, Texas, on the night before the great hurricane of 1900, when the island still glows with confidence beneath a restless Gulf sky. You feel the warm air pressing softly against your face, heavy with salt, rain, coal smoke, and the faint sweetness of damp wood. The streets shine with evening moisture, and the ocean breathes beyond the houses, not roaring yet, just murmuring like something turning in sleep. What would you notice if you were there? Would the wind seem ordinary? Or would some quiet instinct tell you the sea is preparing something enormous? So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you are listening from and your local time, because somewhere, someone else is drifting into this same old stormy night with you. Now, dim the lights and step gently onto the island, where evening settles like a damp shawl across Galveston. You arrive with the last gold of September still fading behind the rooftops. The city seems proud of itself, and not without reason, honestly. Galveston stands at the edge of Texas like a bright promise to the sea. Its streets are straight, busy, and confident beneath the gathering evening haze. You feel crushed shell and damp grit beneath your shoes as you walk. The air carries the smell of tar, salt water, horse sweat, and supper. Somewhere nearby, a screen door sighs open and taps softly shut again. A wagon rolls past, its wheels whispering over wet sand and uneven boards. You hear harness leather creak, then a horse snorts into the thick air. The whole island seems to breathe with the Gulf, slow and uneasy. Galveston in 1900 is one of the grandest cities in Texas. It is wealthy, crowded, ambitious, and rather pleased with its own reflection. Banks, cotton offices, hotels, churches, and shops fill its busy avenues. The harbour has helped make fortunes, and fortunes have built polished rooms. You see gaslights and lamps beginning to bloom behind curtained windows. They glow amber, soft and domestic, against the blue-grey evening. People are finishing errands, closing counters, stacking crates, and counting coins. They speak of weather, naturally, because everyone speaks of weather near the water. Still, most voices remain calm, practical, and just a little bored. Rain is inconvenient, yes, but rain is not exactly a historical event. Not yet. You pass a shop where bolts of cloth have been brought inside. The shopkeeper turns a key, tests the latch, and glances toward the sky. His fingers smell faintly of starch, ink, and the brass of the register. He has seen storms before, and this knowledge steadies him too much. That is the odd thing about familiarity. It can be comfort, and it can be a blindfold. Across the street, two boys chase each other through shallow puddles. Their shoes slap the boards, sharp and quick, while their mother calls. The call is tired, affectionate, and firm enough to end the game. They obey slowly, because children have always negotiated with bedtime like lawyers. A soft gust moves through the street and lifts a loose newspaper. It tumbles once, sticks to a fence, then peels away again. You catch a glimpse of printed talk about weather reports and shipping concerns. Messages have moved by telegraph, but certainty travels less neatly than electricity. There are warnings somewhere in the wider world, passed between offices and stations. Yet warnings must become belief before they change an evening. That part is always difficult. The sky above the Gulf holds colours that feel slightly wrong. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just bruised at the edges and strangely low. Clouds gather in layers, grey upon violet, like folded wet linen. You smell rain arriving before it touches you. Metallic and green. Palm fronds clatter softly together along a yard, their edges whispering. A dog lifts its head beneath a porch and refuses to settle. Nobody writes that down, of course. History rarely pauses for the dog beneath the porch. Still, these tiny details gather around you, quiet as dust in lamplight. A woman steps out to pull laundry from a line before dark. The sheets snap against her hands, damp, stubborn, and smelling of soap. She mutters at the wind, because someone must be held responsible. The laundry basket rests against her hip while the first drops begin. They are large drops, warm drops, widely spaced and almost lazy. They darken the packed earth in little coins, then they pause. You might almost believe the weather has reconsidered. Along the Strand, the commercial heart of the city, buildings stand solid and ornate. Their iron fronts and tall windows seem built for permanence and applause. Men in collars and waistcoats step carefully around mud near the curbs. They discuss cargo, insurance, railway connections, and prices with serious mouths. The smell here is sharper, mixed with cotton, tobacco, rope, and fish. You hear ships creaking in the harbour, their rigging chiming softly above decks. The sound is delicate, almost musical, and somehow nervous. Galveston depends on those ships, and the ships depend on weather. It is a partnership with an unreliable partner. The gulf beyond the harbour wall lies darker than the sky. Its surface is restless, puckered, and moving with a strange intention. A sailor standing near a piling watches it without speaking much. He spits into the water, misses the wind, and pretends that was planned. A neat little humiliation, the sort the weather enjoys. He has heard talk of a storm moving somewhere across the Gulf. Perhaps it will curve away, as storms often do in hopeful conversation. Perhaps it will weaken, or wander, or spend itself over open water. People are very skilled at negotiating with danger when danger is invisible. You feel that negotiation happening all around you. It moves through jokes, shrugs, small errands, and delayed decisions. In a boarding house dining room, supper plates are being cleared from long tables. The room smells of coffee, onions, lamp oil, and damp wool. Guests talk over one another while rain taps lightly against the windows. A travelling salesman complains about the road, his samples, and the humidity. His collar has surrendered, which seems to offend him personally. A teacher from the city schools listens, smiling politely into her cup. She is thinking about lesson papers. Not disaster. Beside her, an elderly man folds his newspaper with slow precision. He says storms have always been part of life here. The table accepts this as wisdom, because it sounds like wisdom. Historians still argue whether Galvestonians were mainly misinformed, overconfident, or simply trapped by the limits of forecasting. The answer may be all three, which is annoying, but usually historical. Weather science is improving in 1900, but it is still young. Forecasters study pressure, wind, clouds, ships' reports, and telegraph messages. Yet the Gulf keeps many secrets beneath its wide grey skin. The island itself is low, long, and exposed to the water. Much of Galveston sits only a little above the restless sea. That fact is not hidden. Exactly. It is just easy to live beside a fact until it becomes furniture. You know the sea is near because you taste it on your lips. You know the land is low because puddles linger after ordinary rain. You know the wind has room to run because nothing stops it. Still, daily life is persuasive. Bills must be paid, children must be washed, lamps must be trimmed, a kettle must be moved before it boils over. Normal life is bossy that way. It keeps tapping your shoulder, even while the horizon darkens. Now you move into a residential street, where houses lift themselves on piers. Porches stretch wide, inviting breezes during long, sticky summers. Tonight those porches feel watchful, their chairs rocking without anyone sitting there. A lace curtain swells inward through an open window, then falls back. Inside, a mother pins up her hair before checking on a sleeping child. The child lies under a thin sheet, one hand open on the pillow. The room smells of milk, talcum, cedar drawers, and coming rain. The mother touches the window frame and feels the dampness gathering there. She considers closing it, then leaves it cracked for air. Heat still sits inside the house, soft and stubborn. A mosquito whines near her ear. Some enemies are tiny. Beyond the window, another gust moves between the houses with more force. It presses against walls, rattles a shutter, and stirs the dust beneath beds. You feel it as a change in your own breathing. Not fear yet, but attention. Across the way, a piano plays in a parlour, slightly out of tune. The melody is familiar, tender, and slowed by the damp air. Voices join for a verse, then fade into laughter. Someone misses a note and someone else claps with exaggerated sympathy. It is a lovely sound, very human, and therefore slightly heartbreaking. Not because they know, but because they do not. The ordinary evening continues, serving its tea, folding its towels, locking its doors. You stand in the street, and let it surround you. The boards under your feet feel warmer than the moving air. Rain begins again, light at first, touching your sleeves and eyelashes. It smells of roofs, gutters, soil, and the wide, unsettled Gulf. At a nearby hotel, travellers gather near the entrance beneath the awning. They look outward with mild interest, as people do at weather. One man checks his pocket watch, though time cannot help him. A woman holds her skirt above the wet step with careful fingers. A bellhop carries a trunk inside and leaves muddy prints behind him. The clerk frowns at the floor. Priorities are funny little creatures. In the distance, the surf gives a longer sound. Not loud, but deep. It rolls beneath the street noises, beneath voices, wheels, doors, and rain. You feel it more than hear it, like thunder under a pillow. Galveston is not sleeping yet, though it is preparing to. The city is drawing curtains, banking fires, closing ledgers, and gathering children. Every window becomes a small square of yellow against the thickening weather. Every room holds its private inventory of comfort and concern. Candles are checked, not because of panic, but because storms knock things loose. Buckets are moved beneath known leaks with the weary skill of experience. A man tests a shutter and gives it 2 unnecessary extra pulls. His wife asks whether he thinks it will be bad. He answers with confidence, because confidence is expected from him. Probably nothing too serious, he says. It is the kind of sentence history preserves without mercy. On the beach side of the island, the air feels wetter and stronger. You walk near the open stretch where sand gives softly beneath your steps. The gulf appears wide, dark, and strangely crowded with motion. Foam gathers and slides higher than it did earlier in the day. The waves do not crash like mountains yet. They lean, that is the word your body chooses. They lean toward the island, again and again, with patient weight. The smell is raw here, full of brine, weed, mud, and stirred shells. A few people still walk the beach, drawn by spectacle or habit. One couple pauses with umbrellas angled badly against the wind. Their umbrella turns inside out, and they laugh too loudly. The Gulf accepts the joke and keeps coming. A fringe tidbit clings to this storm night like seaweed to a pier. Some later tales speak of animals acting strangely before the worst arrived. Birds vanished from usual perches, dogs whined, and horses resisted certain routes. Such stories are hard to verify, because memory grows vines around catastrophe. Still, you can imagine it without much difficulty. The island has many ears besides human ones. A gull hangs in the air above you, fighting the wind with sharp wings. Then it wheels inland, crying once before disappearing between roofs. The cry fades quickly. The rain thickens. You turn back from the beach as evening loses its last colour. Behind you, the surf continues its slow conversation with the shore. Ahead, Galveston glows with lamps, supper, prayers, quarrels, and tired feet. A streetcar bell rings faintly, softened by rain and distance. Its tracks shine like 2 black ribbons through the street. Passengers sit inside with damp hats, parcel bundles, and thoughtful silence. The conductor braces one hand as the car rocks slightly. He has a route, a schedule, and a growing dislike for the weather. Outside, water gathers in shallow runs along the road. It carries straw, leaves, peelings, and one lonely cork. Small things begin travelling without permission. That is how change enters first. Not with trumpets, but with a cork in gutter water. You walk past a church whose doors are closed for the night. The building smells of wet stone, old wood, and lingering candle smoke. Its steeple points upward into a sky that refuses to answer. A few blocks away, someone is praying over dinner. Someone else is arguing about a misplaced key. Someone is reading in bed, holding a lamp close to the page. The wind presses at all their walls equally. It does not care who is virtuous, wealthy, tired, or late. Weather has terrible manners. The rain strikes harder now, making beads along fences and porch rails. You feel drops run from your hairline down the back of your neck. Your clothes cling slightly at the shoulders. The atmosphere grows intimate, closed in, almost padded by sound. Rain on roofs, rain in barrels, rain in hoofprints, rain on leaves. Each surface makes its own small instrument. Together they create a lullaby with a warning folded inside it. You begin to understand how a person could fall asleep to this. Storm sounds can be soothing when the house still feels stronger. A bed, A lamp, a wall, a familiar quilt. These are powerful arguments. The ocean may mutter outside, but the pillow smells of home. So you follow the city inward, away from the dark beach. You enter the imagination of rooms where people are settling down. A father removes his boots and places them beside the bed. A girl counts seconds between gusts, then loses interest and turns over. A grandmother listens longer than anyone realizes, her hands folded above the blanket. She has known enough weather to distrust a too warm night. Even so, her eyes grow heavy. Sleep is persuasive too. It arrives softly, with no respect for barometers or distant warnings. Somewhere in the city, official concern exists, but it is not yet everywhere. The United States Weather Bureau has men studying the storm with serious attention. Isaac Klein, the Galveston observer, will become central to this story. For now, he is part of a wider human struggle to understand the sky. Facts are available, but not complete. Danger is approaching, but not fully believed. That gap is where the night lives. You pause beneath an awning as rain drips steadily from its edge. Each drop strikes a barrel lid with a hollow, patient note. The street beyond looks blurred, as though painted through watered glass. A carriage passes, its lanterns swaying like small floating moons. For a moment, everything seems suspended between comfort and warning. The island is not innocent. Exactly. It knows storms. It knows high tides, soaked streets, and shingles loosened by wind. But knowledge is not the same as imagination. To imagine the sea crossing the threshold is another matter. To imagine water inside parlours, bedrooms, shops and churches feels almost rude. So the city chooses the kinder possibility. It chooses rain, it chooses wind, it chooses morning errands postponed, not lives overturned. You keep walking while the night closes more firmly around you. The air presses warm against your cheeks, though the rain cools your hands. You taste salt whenever you breathe through your mouth. The lamps blur behind water on the glass, making each home look distant. A final wagon clatters past, then disappears toward the darker end of the street. Voices retreat indoors, doors shut, curtains fall. The gulf continues breathing. Closer now, steady and immense. You stand between the sleeping houses and the unseen water. For this moment, the city is still itself. Its beds are made, its lamps are low, and its people are almost dreaming. The wind slips under eaves and fingers the loose edges of the night. Rain whispers across Galveston with a softness that almost forgives everything. You listen, and the island listens with you. You step into a house where lamplight rests gently on polished wood. The door closes behind you with a soft click and a damp sigh. Inside, the world shrinks to familiar rooms, warm corners, and ordinary decisions. A hallway runner muffles your steps as rain whispers against the windows. The air smells of lamp oil, starch, stewed apples, and wet wool. Somewhere in the kitchen, a kettle ticks as it cools on the stove. The walls seem steady here, and that steadiness feels almost like wisdom. People trust walls because walls have earned trust through many quiet nights. They keep out mosquitoes, heat, gossip, and most weather. Not all weather, of course, but nobody wants that thought sitting openly at the supper table. You move past a parlour where chairs are arranged with careful pride. A lace cloth lies across a small table, holding a Bible and spectacles. The room has that solemn look parlours get when nobody is using them. It is waiting to impress a visitor who may never arrive. A framed photograph watches from the mantel, its face is stiff and serious. In the corner, a fern droops under the damp weight of the air. The leaves shine faintly when the lamp flame lifts and settles. A young woman crosses the room with a tray held against her hip. She gathers cups, each marked with a pale crescent of tea. Her fingertips smell of soap and metal spoons. She pauses at the window when rain runs thickly down the glass. For a moment, her reflection floats there beside the darkening street. She sees herself, the lamp, the curtain, and nothing useful beyond it. The outside has become a blur. That is comforting, until it is not. In Galveston homes, evening routines continue with stubborn tenderness. Children are washed in basins, hair is combed, buttons are undone. Thin nightshirts replace clothes dampened by the heavy coastal air. A mother bends over a child and ties a loose drawstring. The child squirms because bedtime is an old injustice. You hear the small complaint, the patient answer, the sigh of surrender. A bed rope creaks when the child climbs under a sheet. The mattress smells of cotton, cedar, and the day's stored warmth. Rain taps the roof, making the room feel safely enclosed. It is the old trick of shelter. The louder the weather grows, the more precious the room becomes. In another house, an older brother shares a narrow bed with a younger one. They whisper about the wind, then about candy, then about nothing. The younger child asks whether the sea can climb streets. The older child says no, with the authority of 9 years. What a tremendous expert. The room accepts the answer because it is sleepy and convenient. Their bare feet brush beneath the sheet, cool from the floorboards. Outside, a shutter knocks once, then twice, then finds a rhythm. The younger child listens until the rhythm becomes part of dreaming. You continue through Galveston's domestic evening, room by room. The city is not merely banks, docks, rail lines, and bright ambition. It is also laundry hooks, cracked wash basins, hairpins, and cooling biscuits. It is 1,000 people deciding where to put their shoes. This is social history at its softest and most fragile. It lives in things too ordinary to notice until they vanish. A father sits at a small desk with accounts spread under a lamp. The paper curls slightly from the dampness carried inside by the storm. His pen scratches across the page, steady as an insect in dry grass. He adds figures from cotton shipments, groceries, rent, and repairs. Galveston's prosperity reaches even into these private calculations. The port has made the island a commercial gateway for Texas. Cotton moves through its warehouses, ships crowd its harbour, and money follows. That mainstream fact hums beneath the household like machinery under floorboards. Yet here, at the desk, prosperity becomes school shoes and flour. The man rubs his eyes and leaves one column unfinished. Weather makes arithmetic feel less dignified. A gust rattles the window, and the flame bends sharply. He places a hand around the glass chimney without touching it. The heat brushes his skin, dry and immediate. Then the flame straightens again, as if embarrassed by its nerves. In the kitchen, another kind of labour continues. A woman covers leftovers with cloth and sets pans away from dripping spots. The stove gives off a heavy warmth scented with ash and grease. Rainwater has begun to sneak through a known crack near the back wall. She sets a chicked bowl beneath it without drama. The bowl has performed this duty before. Each drop lands with a delicate, accusing sound. She wipes the table, wrings the cloth, and glances toward the door. Her shoulders ache from the day, and the air feels too thick. Still, she checks the latch again. The wood is swollen by humidity, and the bolt resists her hand. She pushes harder, mutters softly, and wins a small domestic battle. Victories come in many sizes. You feel the floorboards under your feet, slightly uneven and faintly damp. Many Galveston houses are raised above the ground on posts or piers. The design helps with air circulation, damp soil, and ordinary flooding. It also creates shadows beneath homes where cats, chickens, and lost toys gather. Tonight, the dark space below seems deeper than usual. Wind moves there with a low, hollow sound. A cat darts beneath the steps, fur slicked by rain, dignity completely ruined. Even cats must occasionally accept weather as a superior power. On a nearby porch, rocking chairs shift without hands. Their curved runners scrape faintly against painted boards. The sound resembles someone thinking aloud in the dark. You pass into a boarding house where the evening feels more crowded. Several lives share one roof, divided by doors, curtains, and patience. The hallway smells of damp carpet, tobacco smoke, boiled cabbage, and lavender water. A landlady moves along the corridor carrying extra towels over one arm. She knocks lightly, enters only when invited, and speaks through narrow openings. Her voice is practical, dry, and sharper than the weather. She has seen guests lose keys, tempers, money, and occasionally trousers. A storm is simply another inconvenience for the moment. In one rented room, a young clerk folds his coat over a chair. He has placed his shoes near the wall, toes carefully aligned. His mother taught him order, and he still obeys at a distance. On the washstand, his razor rests beside a small photograph from home. The photograph shows a farm road, a fence, and people he misses. Rain blurs the window, turning the city beyond into moving grey silk. He listens to footsteps overhead, and feels less alone because of them. Boarding houses are strange comforts. Privacy is thin, but so is loneliness. Downstairs, two travelling men argue gently over the strength of the wind. One insists the barometer looked unfriendly at the hotel desk. The other says instruments are useful, but nerves can read them too dramatically. Historians continue to debate how many residents understood the real scale of the threat. Some had heard enough to worry, while others trusted experience over distant reports. The truth lies somewhere in rain, rumour, and human habit. Warnings do not arrive as thunderbolts. They arrive as remarks, notices, glances, and easily postponed concerns. You notice how each person interprets the weather through personal need. The merchant wants the storm to pass without damaging stock. The mother wants children asleep before the roof begins complaining. The sailor wants his ship secured and his supper hot. The clerk wants the morning train to run, because plans dislike interruption. So the mind edits danger into something manageable. It trims the edges. It folds the impossible into the ordinary. In a larger home, comfort appears in richer textures. You walk across a carpet that swallows sound like moss. The parlour smells of beeswax, rose water, cigar smoke, and damp silk. Heavy drapes frame tall windows, their tassels trembling when the wind presses. A silver clock ticks on the mantel with self-important precision. No clock has ever stopped a storm, but they do try. A girl in a white nightdress sits beside her nurse, resisting sleep. She holds a china doll with painted cheeks and impossible calm. The doll stares into the room as if it understands everything. A quirky tale survives about storm nights and dolls found far from home. Some were later reported in yards, trees, or debris piles, still wearing tiny smiles. Such accounts blur memory, grief, and the unsettling persistence of objects. Yet it is easy to believe a doll could travel where no child should. The girl presses hers to her chest and asks for one more story. The nurse chooses a gentle one, full of woods and clever animals. Outside, the rain grows louder against the roof. Inside, the story wins for several minutes. That is enough. You move onward, into a smaller home near a working street. Here the rooms are tighter, and every object has a job. A shelf holds plates, a tin cup, a comb, and a folded letter. Work clothes hang from pegs, giving off the smell of sweat and soap. A man sits barefoot, rubbing one heel after a long day near the docks. His hands are rough, the palms marked by rope and splinters. His wife mends a torn sleeve with quick, practiced movements. The needle flashes, disappears, flashes again. Rain makes the lamp smoke slightly, leaving a bitter smell in the room. Their talk is low, economical, and woven through with pauses. They discuss the price of coal, a neighbour's cough, and the rising wind. The man says the tide looked odd near the wharf. His wife asks what odd means. He shrugs. Because odd is not yet a plan. A baby sleeps in a cradle made from reused wood. The cradle rocks when the floor trembles under a gust. For one breath, both adults look toward it. The baby sighs and remains asleep. You feel the tenderness in that shared glance. It is quick, wordless, and enormous. Beyond these homes, Galveston also contains institutions of care and order. Hospitals, schools, churches, and charitable houses stand within the dampening night. The Ursuline Academy, for example, has long been part of Galveston's life. Its buildings shelter sisters, students, and routines shaped by prayer and discipline. In dormitory rooms, girls prepare for sleep under the watch of adults. Wooden floors smell freshly scrubbed, though dampness creeps back quickly. The air carries candle wax, linen, rain, and faint traces of chalk. A bell has marked the evening's rhythm with calm authority. Now whispers rise, are corrected, and rise again more softly. Young people can turn any rule into a negotiation. Even holiness must occasionally request silence twice. A sister moves between beds, her skirts brushing the floor with a dry hush. She listens to the rain with a face trained not to alarm children. Her fingers touch a window latch, then a blanket edge, then her rosary. Faith and practicality share the same hands. Outside, the wind combs through trees and rattles loose branches. Inside, breath slows in rows of narrow beds. The building feels solid, almost monastic, against the weather's wandering mood. Yet even solid buildings are only human promises, made in wood and brick. You sense that truth without wanting to stare at it. In another room, a married couple prepares for bed without speaking much. not from anger, but from the comfortable tiredness of long partnership. He folds his suspenders over a chair. She sets hairpins in a dish with tiny metallic clicks. The room smells of rain-cooled cotton, camphor, and the last smoke from a lamp. Their window has been closed, but damp air still enters somehow. Coastal weather has the manners of a determined relative. It finds a way in. The woman lifts a quilt, then lowers it because the night is too warm. The man sits on the bed and listens. Wind pushes along the side of the house like a large hand. He says the storm may keep him awake. She says he sleeps through everything. A fair accusation. He smiles in the dark, and the bed creaks as he lies down. These are the soft exchanges history rarely records, yet they are the texture of any lost night. You pause near the centre of the house, surrounded by muffled domestic sound. A basin settles with a ceramic click. A chair leg scrapes. A child coughs once. Rain speaks on every surface, gathering authority without raising its voice too quickly. This is how an evening becomes memorable only in retrospect. At the time, it is still made of chores. It is still made of sleepy irritation, tenderness, habit, and small repairs. You touch a wall and feel a faint vibration through the boards. The wood is warm inside, damp outside, and older than some of its occupants. It has held laughter, fever, birthdays, arguments, and summer heat. Now it holds the pressure of a changing night. Nobody in these rooms can see the storm's full shape. They cannot see the gulf lifting beyond the island's low edges. They cannot see how water may turn streets into channels. They know only the rain against glass and the wind at the eaves. The mind builds its world from what is near. A lamp, a hand, a bed, a familiar ceiling above the face. You stand there with them in the hush between one gust and another. The houses of Galveston gather their sleepers carefully, as if tucking away treasures. Boots wait by doors, coats sag from hooks, and lamps are turned low. The smell of supper fades into damp wood and cotton sheets. Outside, the storm continues, testing shutters, fences, signs, and branches. Inside, people surrender one by one to rest. They do not surrender because they are foolish. They surrender because bodies must sleep, even at history's edge. You feel your own eyelids grow heavy in the amber quiet. Rain threads the night with silver sound. The walls still stand. The rooms still remember their purpose, and for a little while, that is enough for everyone. You stand where information enters the island, in clicks, marks, and murmurs. The telegraph office feels warmer than the street, though rain cools the windows. Inside, the air smells of damp paper, brass, ink, and tired clothing. A lamp burns steadily above a desk crowded with forms and messages. The instrument waits like a small mechanical insect, ready to chatter. Then it begins. Sharp taps break the room's hush, quick and delicate as nervous fingernails. A clerk leans forward, pencil ready, translating sound into words. He has done this often enough for his hand to move before thought. Messages come from elsewhere, from coastlines, stations, ships, and official offices. They arrive in fragments, shaped by distance and human judgment. A storm is out there, somewhere in the Gulf, moving with force. That is the uncomfortable truth pressing behind the tidy lines of text. But paper makes danger look strangely polite. You watch the clerk write, pause, adjust his cuff, and write again. Rain trembles on the glass in little branching trails. Outside, the street appears smeared and wavering through the office window. Inside, the telegraph key clicks as if gossiping with the weather itself. Electricity travels faster than wind, which seems helpful, at least in theory. Yet a warning is not only a message. It must be received, trusted, repeated, and acted upon. Human beings are the slower part of the system. Naturally, we do like to complicate machinery. The mainstream fact is simple enough. By 1900, the United States Weather Bureau operated a national network of observers. Those observers used telegraph reports to track weather across wide distances. They watched barometers, wind direction, rainfall, and signals from ships when available. Still, the science of hurricane forecasting remained limited and uncertain. Storms over warm water could hide their intentions for many dangerous hours. You feel that uncertainty in the room more than anyone says aloud. It gathers in the pauses between clicks. The clerk carries a copied message to another man near the counter. They speak in low voices, using careful phrases that protect them from panic. Storm in the Gulf? Possibly, Severe, likely rain and high winds. These words sit on the page like folded clothes. Neat words. Insufficient words. Outside, a gust hits the building and presses rain beneath the door. The clerk looks down at the water creeping across the threshold. He finds a rag and pushes it against the gap. A very human defence against an enormous atmosphere. Across town, a weather observer studies instruments with growing attention. You enter a room where the barometer waits beneath glass. Its needle or column does not care about anyone's confidence. Pressure has been falling, and falling pressure carries its own quiet dread. You smell oiled wood, wet coats, and the faint mineral scent of instruments. Papers are weighted so the wind from a doorway cannot scatter them. A map lies open, the gulf drawn in pale shapes and measured lines. The map looks almost reasonable. The real Gulf is less cooperative. Historians still debate how much warning Galveston's officials and residents truly received. They also question how those warnings changed once filtered through policy and pride. The argument matters because information never travels untouched. It changes shape in offices, newspapers, conversations, and memory. Some officials feared alarm could harm commerce or cause needless chaos. Others believed the storm would not strike with extreme violence. Both ideas sound calm on paper. Both can become dangerous when the sea is rising. You step outside into a lane where the weather speaks less politely. Rain stipples your face. Warm at first, then cooler along your jaw. Wind lifts the brim of a man's hat and sends it tumbling sideways. He chases it 3 steps, catches it, and laughs at himself. There is relief in making weather ridiculous. It keeps the mind from kneeling before it. Nearby wires hum faintly overhead, stretched dark against the unsettled sky. Telegraph and telephone lines lace the modern city with fragile connection. They look impressive, until you imagine them under flying timber. A carriage driver pauses at a corner and listens, not to words, but to the wind's changed direction and weight. His horse stamps once, uneasy in the rain-slick street. The animal's nostrils flare, tasting the thick, salty air. A loose sign above a shop swings against its bracket with a dull knock. Knock. Pause. Knock. The rhythm enters your body. It feels like a question repeated by someone patient and unwelcome. You continue towards streets where notices and talk begin to travel. A man emerges from an office and crosses quickly beneath a black umbrella. The umbrella shudders, turns sideways, and becomes more philosophy than shelter. He lowers it, gives up, and hurries on with wet shoulders. He may carry news, concern, or only another errand postponed too late. Around him, the city's confidence remains mostly intact. Men still speak of business. Women still call children inside. Cooks still check stoves and servants still carry water. A warning has to compete with supper, wages, fatigue, and habit. It is not an even contest. At a newspaper office, damp shoes mark the floor near the entrance. The room smells of printer's ink, hot metal, wet wool, and tobacco. A press stands quiet, or nearly quiet. Its power held in reserve. Editors and printers understand that words can move a city. They also understand that words can be doubted, delayed, or misunderstood. A storm notice may become a column, a paragraph, or a spoken aside. It depends on timing, confidence, and space. Everything depends on something irritating. A young printer wipes his hands on a stained apron. He asks whether the storm will be a bad one. An older man gives a non-committal answer, which is an elegant kind of cowardice. Nobody wants to be wrong in print. Nobody wants to be right too late, either. Rain drums harder on the roof above them. The sound turns the room inward, enclosing type cases and stacks of paper. You imagine words being set letter by letter in reverse. Each tiny block of metal waits to make sense only when pressed. The process feels symbolic enough to be annoying. History enjoys that sort of thing. Somewhere near the harbour, warnings take a different form. The captain orders lines checked, cargo secured, hatches fastened, and loose gear stowed. His voice cuts through the rain, practical and tired. The dock smells of rope, bilge water, fish, wet cotton, and iron. Lanterns swing in the gusts, painting brief arcs of yellow on black water. Ships strain gently against their moorings, wood and metal complaining together. A sailor places his palm on a piling and feels it tremble. The harbour water lifts and falls with strange impatience. It slaps stone, nudges debris, and sucks back with a hollow sound. Out here, The storm is not an idea. It is force already touching objects. You feel spray on your lips, sharper than rain and colder. A fringe titbit sometimes whispered around old storm stories concerns ghostly lights at sea. Mariners in many Gulf communities spoke of odd glows before violent weather. Some were likely lanterns, lightning, phosphorescence, or anxious imagination doing embroidery. Still, on a night like this, a pale blink beyond the harbour feels memorable. You see a light vanish behind rain, then appear again lower and blurred. Perhaps it is a vessel. Perhaps it is nothing mysterious at all. The mind dislikes emptiness and decorates it quickly. That is why storms collect legends like driftwood. Back in the city, birds have withdrawn from roof lines and exposed wires. The trees hold fewer small movements than they should. You notice the absence slowly, as if silence has thickened above your head. A blackbird sheeps across the street too low, then disappears under eaves. Leaves turn their pale undersides toward the wind. The air feels charged, sticky, and restless against your skin. A woman on a porch watches the sky and folds her arms tightly. Her apron snaps against her knees. She has no official instrument, no map, no telegraph message. She has only memory, smell, pressure, and a prickling at the neck. These are imperfect tools. They are not useless. She calls to a neighbour across the rain-dark street. The neighbour cups one hand at her ear and leans out. Their words break apart in the wind, becoming gesture more than speech. One points toward the Gulf, the other shakes her head, then nods, then shrugs. Communication, the grand machine of civilization, remains gloriously awkward. You pass beneath a line where wet laundry has been abandoned in haste. One shirt twists slowly on its pins like a tired flag. The cloth slaps itself, heavy with rain. In an open doorway, a man fastens a plank across a lower window. He is not certain it is necessary, which makes the work more irritating. His hammer strikes ring out bright and lonely between gusts. Each blow smells faintly of fresh, splintered wood. The plank is crooked. He notices. He decides the storm will not grade his carpentry. This is a sensible conclusion. Across the yard, his neighbour watches with mild amusement until another gust arrives. Then the neighbour fetches his own hammer. Concern is contagious when it wears the costume of practicality. The sky lowers further, making the evening feel sealed inside a lid. Clouds move fast overhead, but the light beneath them seems strangely stagnant. You hear thunder far away, not a crack, but a long, padded roll. It travels through the wet air like furniture being moved upstairs. Children at a window count the seconds. Though nobody explained the method perfectly, they reach numbers too high, lose track, and start again. Adults nearby pretend not to listen. In the distance, church bells or clock bells mark the hour. The sound reaches you softened by rain, each note blurred at the edge. Time continues doing its little official duties. The storm does not appear impressed. Inside a commercial office, businessmen consider whether to send employees home. Some already have. Some hesitate because ledgers, schedules, and pride are stubborn companions. The floor smells of dust, dampened by many shoes. A ceiling fan hangs still above them, useless in the thickening air. One man says the island has weathered many storms. Another says this one feels different. The first man asks different how. The second man has no clean answer. Feeling is not evidence, but evidence sometimes begins as feeling. That uncomfortable truth makes everyone fidget. On a wall, a calendar shows September. Respectable and printed. The date sits there plainly, surrounded by advertisements and small promises. A calendar cannot warn anyone. It simply names the day and leaves consequences to others. You move again through rain and yellow windows. At several corners, people discuss official storm flags or the absence of certainty. Some remember past storms that veered away or weakened before landfall. Some trust the city's position, its experience, its growing modernity. Galveston has electric lights, streetcars, fine homes, and commercial importance. Surely such a city cannot be easily humbled. That thought is not spoken so plainly. It breathes beneath many choices. Modern life gives people tools, but also a flattering mirror. You feel the mirror in the streets, shining even under rain. A messenger boy pedals hard through puddles, carrying notes against his chest. His cap is soaked, his sleeves cling, and his bicycle chain complains. He is young enough to enjoy speed and old enough to resent wet socks. At one corner, he skids, steadies himself, and continues with heroic annoyance. The envelopes he carries may contain business, worry, instruction, or ordinary delay. The storm does not sort human messages by importance. It wets them all. He passes a yard where chickens huddle beneath a tilted shed. Their feathers look insulted by existence. A rooster stands ankle-deep in water with tragic dignity. You must admire the performance. Rain grows steadier. No longer arriving in gestures, but in commitment. Gutters overflow and pour from roofs in clear, twisting ropes. The smell of the city changes as water wakes everything hidden. Mud, manure, rotting leaves, seaweed, coal dust, and damp brick rise together. The atmosphere feels closer to your skin, almost touchable. You wipe rain from your cheek, and your palm comes away gritty with salt. The wind has begun carrying the Gulf inland, grain by grain. That is a message too, a physical telegram. Nobody needs to decode it, yet many still underestimate its meaning. Near a schoolhouse, a teacher secures papers in a cabinet. She has written lessons for a morning that may not behave. Her classroom smells of chalk, varnish, damp slate, and children's coats. Desks stand in orderly rows, small as promises. The alphabet remains on the wall, confident in its neat arrangement. Rain flickers across the window panes, and the letters blur in reflection. She closes the cabinet, tests it, then takes her umbrella from a hook. Outside, a gust nearly pushes her back through the doorway. She steadies herself and laughs once, without much amusement. Some warnings arrive through the muscles. No expert is needed when the wind shoves you. Still, she locks the door carefully. Careful habits survive even when certainty fails. You follow her gaze toward the south, where darkness thickens over the sea. The horizon has vanished. There is only a vast grey-black mass of rain and moving air. Somewhere beyond it, the storm rotates with a structure no one can see. Its winds circle, its pressure drops, its waters rise and gather. On maps, it would look organised. From here, it feels like confusion gaining strength. That is one reason hurricanes are so unnerving. Their order is hidden inside their violence. A man walking past lifts his collar and says the weather is getting lively. Lively? The word is absurdly small, yet people often choose small words when large ones would frighten them. You do it too. Perhaps. You tell yourself the rain is heavy, the wind strong, the night unpleasant. Each description is true. None is enough. At the edge of the street, water runs over your shoe sole. It is shallow, warm, and moving in the wrong direction. You look down. A leaf spins once, pauses against a stone, then breaks free. The motion is tiny, but it holds your attention. The whole island is receiving signals now. The telegraph, the barometer, the harbour, the animals, the gut, the skin. Every system speaks in its own language. No single voice commands everyone. No single warning gathers the city into one clear action. Instead, Galveston enters the night through scattered understandings. One person worries, another dismisses, another prepares quietly, another sleeps because exhaustion has the final vote. You stand in the rain among them, hearing wires hum above the streets. The sound seems like singing, thin and strained. Wind moves through the gaps between buildings and carries salt into your breath. Windows glow, then darken, one household at a time. Messages continue to move, but the storm moves too. The island listens with lamps, instruments, animals, bones, and uneasy dreams. Some signals are read, some are missed, some arrive too softly for a confident city to hear. You walk toward the beach as dusk loosens its last hold on the island. The streets behind you glow with lamps, but the shore pulls at attention. Sand gathers in damp ridges beneath your shoes. Soft, cool, and uneven. Each step sinks slightly, then fills with a shine of rainwater. The air tastes of salt so strongly it seems almost chewable. A line of foam slides up the beach and reaches farther than expected. It pauses near your toes, trembles, then drains back with a hiss. The sound is intimate, like a secret spoken through teeth. You look out and see no peaceful holiday sea tonight. The Gulf is dark, crowded with motion, and strangely muscular. Wave after wave arrives with a slow insistence that feels personal. Not angry, exactly. More determined. A person could mistake that determination for ordinary rough weather. Many people do, because ordinary words are easier to carry home. The beach in Galveston has long been part of the city's charm. Visitors come for breezes, bathing, promenades, and views across open water. The island sells itself partly through nearness to the sea. That closeness feels generous in fair weather, almost glamorous in summer light. Now the same closeness presses against the shore with a different meaning. You understand how geography can change its expression without changing its face. The land remains low and narrow beneath your feet. The gulf remains wide. Between them, there is not much room for pride. A row of bathhouses and beach structures stands in the wet dimness. Their steps are slick, their signs creaking, their railings beaded with rain. Some appear playful by daylight, meant for leisure and easy afternoons. At dusk, they look more like temporary bargains with water. The wind slips through gaps in the boards and makes hollow flute sounds. You touch a railing and feel moisture cold against your palm. The wood is swollen, gritty, and faintly alive under your fingers. A loose nail has rusted into a reddish stain. Small evidence, yes, but storms are built from small evidence ignored in large quantities. A few figures remain along the beach, unable to resist watching. Humans love to supervise danger from a questionable distance. One man stands with his coat buttoned high, hat pulled low, his trousers whip around his ankles as spray darkens the fabric. Beside him, a woman holds her shawl close beneath her chin. The shawl smells of wool, lavender, and rain beginning to sour. They do not speak for several moments. The sea supplies enough conversation. Then she says the tide is very high. He answers that tides are sometimes high. That is true, and absolutely unhelpful. The water surges up again, curling around shells and broken reeds. It leaves behind a strip of seaweed shining like black ribbon. You smell it immediately. Rank and green. Stirred from hidden places. Mixed with it comes the odour of fish, salt mud, and churned sand. The whole beach seems to have opened its drawers and released old things. Bits of wood knocked together in the wash. A bottle turns slowly, flashes once, and disappears beneath foam. Debris has begun arriving before the storm's full force. It is the sea sending calling cards, because apparently manners matter. A child nearby asks whether the ocean is coming to visit. His father lifts him before another run of water reaches them. The father laughs, but the laugh is too brisk. It is the laugh adults use when they are moving faster than they planned. You turn your face into the wind and feel rain strike sideways. The drops sting lightly now, not hard enough to wound, only to command. Your eyelashes gather water. Your ears fill with the layered sound of surf, wind, and rattling boards. Underneath it all lies a deeper pulse. It seems to come from beyond sight, from the storm's hidden centre. In 1900, Galveston had no protective seawall like the one later built. That absence matters more with every rising surge. The beach slopes toward a city that believes itself strong and modern, yet the barrier between street and gulf is mostly sand, distance, and hope. Hope is lovely. Hope is not engineering. The water rolls up again and spreads thinly across the beach. It catches reflected light from a distant lamp and turns pewter for an instant. Then the surface wrinkles under fresh rain. You see how quickly the beach forgets each wave's shape. Every mark is erased, rewritten, and erased again. A promenade of memory would struggle here. Perhaps that is why people later try so hard to tell storm stories. They want to mark what water refuses to keep. Historians still discuss whether a seawall proposed earlier might have changed the disaster. Some argue that public confidence and cost delayed stronger coastal defences. Others warn that even large barriers might have struggled against such a surge. The uncertainty remains heavy, because hindsight always carries tools nobody had ready. You walk along a section where grass bends low behind the dunes. The dune line is not high, not firm, not reassuring. Rain beads on the grass blades, then flies off in sudden gusts. Sand lifts in small, stinging bursts and taps against your cheeks. You smell roots, salt, and the faint sweetness of crushed beach plants. A crab skitters from a puddle and vanishes into a hole. Very sensible. Crabs understand retreat without forming a committee. Behind the beach, houses show their lit windows through sheets of rain. The glow appears close enough to comfort, yet fragile from this angle. Curtains move within them, yellow and soft, like lanterns underwater. You imagine people inside setting chairs back from drafty walls. You imagine lamps being lowered, children being urged toward beds. Out here, those rooms feel almost impossible in their tenderness. The Gulf keeps leaning forward. The island keeps pretending posture is protection. Near a pier, water slaps pilings with stronger force. Each impact sends spray upward in pale bursts. The pilings groan, old wood speaking through pressure. Fishing lines, nets and ropes have been gathered or abandoned in haste. A coil of rope lies soaked on the boards, heavy as a sleeping snake. It smells of hemp, brine, and tar. A fisherman steps carefully across the planks, testing each place before trusting it. His hands move from habit, tying, checking, pulling, and tying again. He knows ropes better than speeches. When a gust hits, he braces one knee and lowers his body. The wind passes over him like a rough animal. He looks toward the water and squints into the rain. He is measuring, not with numbers, but with lived experience. That kind of knowledge deserves respect. It also has limits. A wave strikes under the pier and sends a shudder through the structure. You feel it in your souls. The fisherman mutters that the Gulf is acting ugly. Ugly is another small word with large shoulders. The sky darkens so thoroughly that evening seems to collapse at once. Clouds move like wet smoke, low and fast above the water. Occasional lightning flickers somewhere inside them, veiled and silent at first. For a heartbeat, the surf appears white across a broad black field. Then darkness folds over it again. The rain on your face feels colder now. A gull flies inland, then another, both struggling against invisible blows. Their cries are torn apart before reaching any full shape. A quirky detail from coastal folklore says gulls can become weather prophets. People along many shores have watched birds vanish before severe storms. Modern science treats such observations carefully, because stories grow polished over time. Still, animals often respond to pressure, wind, sound, and changing conditions. You do not need magic to notice unease. You only need to stand here and listen. A pair of dogs bark from somewhere behind a fence. Their voices rise, stop suddenly, then rise again from farther away. Perhaps they are being called inside. Perhaps they dislike thunder. Perhaps they have better judgment than several officials in hats. The thought is rude, but not entirely unfair. You continue along the shore, where beach attractions fade into darker shapes. A signboard swings wildly, letters blurred by water and motion. A bench lies partly overturned, one leg digging into sand. Footprints appear briefly where people have crossed toward the road. Already the rising wash reaches some of them and smooths them flat. The beach becomes less a place and more a process. Everything here is moving, soaking, tilting, shifting or loosening. Even stillness is temporary. A man with a lantern approaches from the road, shielding the flame with his hand. The lantern smells hot and smoky in the wet air. Its light jumps across his knuckles, over sand, then across foam. He calls to someone near the bathhouses, urging them to come away. His words scatter in the wind, but the gesture is clear. One figure waves back, then begins walking inland. Reluctance shows even in silhouette. People do not leave spectacles easily. The sea is frightening, yes, but also magnificent. That is one of nature's least considerate habits. It can be beautiful while becoming dangerous. You pause and let that beauty work on you. Carefully, the waves are higher now, crowded, gleaming, and full of torn light. Foam races in tangled lines that resemble lace pulled from a drawer. Rain strikes the surface and vanishes instantly. The horizon is gone, so the water seems endless and unbordered. You feel your body understand before your mind completes the sentence. The Gulf is not simply beside Galveston tonight, it is approaching. Behind you, the road away from the beach grows muddy and shining. Water collects in ruts and trembles whenever a wagon passes. A carriage waits near the dunes, horse stamping and tossing its head. The driver pulls the reins gently, speaking low into the wet, dark. Steam rises faintly from the animal's body where rain meets warmth. Its flank smells of leather, sweat, and storm air. The horse does not care about property values or civic reputation. It wants firmer ground, a dry stall, and perhaps a carrot. Again, excellent priorities. The carriage wheels sink slightly when it turns. Mud sucks at them with a soft, unpleasant sound. The driver clicks his tongue. The horse leans forward, and they move inland. You follow for a while, then look back once more. The beach has become a pale, shifting edge between two forms of darkness. Sea and sky seem to have lost their boundary. A person standing there might feel the world becoming unfinished. Rain runs down your collar and between your shoulder blades. Your clothes cling with a patient coldness. The wind presses fabric against your knees and fills your ears with pressure. You feel the atmosphere as touch. Not just weather. It pushes, pulls, wraps, and breathes. The night is learning your shape. Closer to the city, a few residents gather at a corner with umbrellas and lamps. They speak of the water, each adding a report from another street. It is high near the beach. It is running along ditches. It is crossing low places already. These are not yet cries of terror. They are observations, traded like coins. But the value of each coin is rising. One older woman says she remembers a storm years back that frightened everyone. Another says this one will pass by morning. Both voices carry experience, and experience disagrees with itself constantly. That is deeply inconvenient. You see a young man glance toward his house, then back toward the beach. He wants to watch longer, but responsibility tugs him by the sleeve. At last he turns home. The shore keeps changing without him. Along the sand, the water reaches the base of a set of steps. It curls around the lowest board, withdraws, then returns higher. The motion is patient enough to feel intelligent. Of course, the sea is not plotting. It only follows pressure, gravity, wind, and the shape of land. But from your place in the rain, it feels like intention. That feeling matters, because humans respond to stories more quickly than measurements. A storm surge is a measurement. The ocean coming for your doorstep is a story. Tonight, the story begins writing itself along the beach. You step back as another wave rushes farther than expected. Foam wraps your shoes and fills the seam around the soles. The water is warm, almost human warm, and that makes it stranger. It drains away, leaving sand shivering around your feet. For a moment, you cannot hear the city. Only surf, only wind, only rain in 1,000 hurried touches. Then a bell rings inland, faint but real, and the island reappears in your mind. There are streets, kitchens, parlours, beds, shops, and sleeping children beyond the dunes. There are people who have not seen what you have seen. There are people who have seen it and chosen familiar explanations. You take one final look at the Gulf. Its surface flashes under distant lightning, crowded with white edges and black hollows. The smell of salt and torn weeds fills your lungs. The sand beneath you no longer feels like land with confidence. It feels like a question. You turn inland while rain follows hard against your back. The beach remains behind you, but its sound comes along. It moves through the streets, under doors, and into the dreaming city. The ocean has found its voice for the night, and it is speaking lower now, deeper, and much closer. You enter the city as night covers Galveston with wet, trembling darkness. The beach is no longer visible, but its voice follows every street. It rolls behind walls, slips between buildings, and rises beneath ordinary sound. Rain falls harder now, not frantic, but steady enough to claim authority. The gutters run full, carrying leaves, straw, paper, and bits of broken shell. Your shoes meet shallow water at each crossing, warm and slick around leather. The smell of the island has changed again. It is less supper and more drainage, less lamp oil and more stirred earth. Still, the city does not become one single feeling. It becomes many small scenes, each lit by a different window. You pass a bakery where the day's heat still clings to the bricks. The doorway smells faintly of yeast, sugar, flour, and wet canvas sacks. Inside, a baker checks shutters with hands dusted pale at the knuckles. His ovens have been banked, and the last loaves rest under cloth. He listens when a gust strikes the storefront. The glass trembles in its frame, then settles with a faint complaint. He says to no one that windows are dramatic things. Then he wedges a crate near the lower door. Just in case. Just in case is becoming a popular phrase tonight. It sounds modest, practical, and wonderfully vague. A few streets away, a pharmacy glows softly behind rain-blurred panes. Glass bottles line the shelves, green, brown, and clear in lamplight. Their labels curl slightly from the dampness seeping into the room. The air smells of camphor, alcohol, licorice, soap, and wet umbrellas. A pharmacist counts tablets into a paper packet for a tired mother. Her child leans against her skirt, flushed and half asleep. The mother asks whether the weather will be worse toward morning. The pharmacist pauses with his fingers over the folded paper. He gives the answer people give when they want to be useful without frightening anyone. Best stay indoors, he says. That much, at least, is excellent medical advice. The bell over the door rings as they leave. Wind pushes in after them and scatters a light dusting of rain across the floor. The pharmacist wipes the counter slowly, though it is not the counter that worries him. Across town, a nurse walks along a corridor carrying a shaded lamp. The hospital smells of carbolic, boiled linen, damp plaster, and sleepless bodies. Rain taps against high windows with 1,000 small, cold fingers. Patients shift in iron beds as the building creaks around them. One man asks whether the roof is sound. The nurse says it is, with practiced calm and no unnecessary flourishes. Her shoes make soft squeaks against the polished floor. She checks a bandage, adjusts a blanket, and closes a window latch. The latch bites poorly, and she presses harder until it catches. Behind her, someone coughs into the dimness. The air feels heavy, as if every breath must move through wet cloth. Hospitals are places where worry is already at home. A storm has to compete with fever, pain, childbirth, age, and loneliness. Honestly, it has some rude confidence joining that gathering. Yet the nurse keeps moving, because work offers a narrow bridge over fear. In a small ward, a child sleeps with one hand under the cheek. The child's breathing sounds soft beneath the rain. The nurse pauses there a moment longer than necessary. Then she continues down the corridor, carrying light from bed to bed. You follow the night into the shop district, where businesses close more firmly. Metal keys turn in locks, wooden signs are taken down, or left to swing because someone is tired. A grocer stacks sacks of beans away from the door. The sacks give off a dry, earthy smell that rain has not yet reached. Barrels of pickles and crackers stand in rows like quiet witnesses. He checks the cash drawer, closes it, opens it again, then closes it. A person can repeat a useful action when the mind refuses stillness. His wife appears from the back room with a shawl over her shoulders. She says the road behind the store is already holding water. He says he noticed. Neither says the other thing. The thing is too large and has no convenient handle. A cat sits on the counter, tail wrapped tightly around its paws. It watches both of them with offended, golden eyes. Cats dislike emotional weather almost as much as actual weather. The grocer lifts it down, and it immediately returns to the counter. Some battles are not worth fighting. In the street outside, water slaps against the curb in shallow, restless sheets. A streetcar comes slowly through the rain, its lamps pale and wavering. The bell rings, softened by water and distance. Passengers sit close together, damp sleeves touching without apology. A seamstress clutches a bundle wrapped in oilcloth against her chest. A dock worker smells of rope, sweat, tobacco, and sea spray. A young man with a book tries to read, fails, and stares at the window. The glass gives him only his own face and the silver scratches of rain. The conductor grips a strap and watches the track ahead. He knows the low places where water gathers first. He knows which corners become troublesome in hard rain. Galveston's electric street railway is a sign of modern urban life. Tonight its bright promise moves carefully through a dark, wet city. Progress is impressive. Progress also hates flooded rails. At one stop, a woman steps down and nearly loses her footing. A stranger catches her elbow before she falls. They exchange a quick, embarrassed thanks, then vanish in opposite directions. The small kindness remains hanging in the rain. You continue into a neighborhood where houses stand close and voices carry. Someone calls from an upstairs window to ask whether the street is passable. A man below says it is, depending on how proud you are of your shoes. That answer is not official, but it has charm. Laughter comes from the window, brief and grateful. Then the shutter closes. Wind bends rain beneath porch roofs and against doors thought safely protected. You smell kerosene, damp wood, horse manure, fried onions, and open drains. The city is intimate now. Stripped of distance by weather, every sound feels closer. Every light seems more exposed. At a corner, 2 policemen stand with capes darkened by rain. Their boots shine wetly under the nearest lamp. One has water running from the brim of his hat onto his nose. He wipes it away with dignity, which the storm completely ignores. They talk about checking certain streets and watching for trouble. Trouble is a flexible word tonight. It might mean a fallen sign, a flooded ditch, a drunken man, or something worse. Their lantern throws light across the water moving along the roadway. The current is not strong here, but it is persistent. One officer tests it with his boot and frowns. The other says the tide must be pushing in. Neither speaks loudly. Rain has made the whole conversation private. In some homes, music still tries to hold the evening together. You hear a fiddle from behind a closed door, thin but lively. The player works through a tune as if speed can keep worry outside. Feet tap once, then stop when wind slams rain against the wall. Someone laughs in surprise, and the fiddle begins again, more softly. The smell from that house is warm beans, lamp smoke, and wet coats. A baby cries, is hushed, and then hiccups into sleep. A grandmother near the hearth tells everyone not to stand by the windows. Nobody argues, because grandmothers often possess emergency authority. A quirky Galveston tale, told in various forms, claims some residents hosted storm gatherings. People came together to pass the evening with music, cards, or conversation. These accounts are difficult to verify in every detail, naturally, but gathering during bad weather is a very human instinct. You would rather be foolish together than sensible alone. In a boarding room above a shop, card players sit around a small table. The cards feel limp in the damp air. Coins and buttons have replaced serious stakes, which is probably just as well. A lamp smokes slightly, leaving a bitter thread above the chimney. One player insists the storm will break before midnight. Another says the air feels too heavy for that. A third says nothing, because he is losing and blames the humidity. Fair enough. The window rattles, and all four heads turn at once. For a moment, the cards lie forgotten. Then someone clears his throat and asks whose deal it is. Ordinary life resumes, with a little more force than before. You pass a fire station where horses stamp in their stalls. The building smells of hay, leather, wet harness, and polished metal. Men speak quietly while checking equipment by lamplight. Their coats hang ready, heavy and dark along the wall. Fire is always feared in crowded wooden cities, especially when storms damage lamps and lines. Galveston has known the danger of urban fires. Like many growing cities, tonight water is everywhere, which should make fire seem ridiculous. Yet danger has a tiresome habit of inviting friends. A firefighter runs one hand along a hose, testing its placement. Another steps outside and looks up at the wires swaying above the street. The wind presses his coat flat against his back. He returns without comment, which says enough. In a church residence, a minister sits at a desk preparing words for Sunday. The room smells of paper, damp wool, candle wax, and old books. His pen waits above a sentence about comfort in troubled times. He looks at the sentence and smiles faintly at its timing. The rain on the roof grows heavier, as if offering notes. He closes the book, stands, and walks to the window. Across the street, a family moves quickly through lamplight behind a curtain. The minister watches them place towels beneath a door. He considers visiting someone elderly nearby, then hesitates at the force of the wind. Pastoral duty is noble. Wet pastoral duty is still wet. He takes his coat from a peg anyway. Some people are inconveniently good. The door opens and rain enters like a rude guest. He lowers his head and steps out into the night. Near the harbour, the city feels less domestic and more industrial. Warehouses loom in the rain, their walls dark and streaming. The air smells of cotton bales, molasses, fish, coal smoke, tar, and wet rope. Men move under lanterns, securing doors and checking stacked goods. Water laps higher along the wharf than comfort permits. A watchman stands near a warehouse entrance with his coat collar raised. His lantern swings in short arcs, revealing puddles, crates, posts, and shining rails. A rat darts from one stack to another with impressive professional urgency. Nobody likes to admit it, but rats often make sensible decisions. The watchman notices and spits into the rain. Then he lifts a loose board and wedges it across a door. The board feels slick and heavy in his hands. Behind him, ships strain again, making low animal sounds against their lines. Historians have long debated whether Galveston's commercial confidence delayed stronger preparation. Some point to the city's wealth, ambition, and competition with other ports. Others emphasize limited forecasting, local experience, and the unpredictable path of hurricanes. Both views can fit inside the same wet evening. People can be proud and underinformed. They can be cautious and still unlucky. They can make reasonable choices inside a reality that has not fully revealed itself. That is the uncomfortable softness of the past. It does not arrange itself into easy blame. You walk back toward residential streets as the hour grows later. The rain no longer decorates the city. It occupies it. Water stands in yards, mirrors lamps, and trembles under gusts. Porch steps shine, fence posts drip, loose petals from garden flowers paste themselves against muddy paths. The scent of crushed blossoms rises strangely sweet above the smell of drains. A woman crosses her yard with a lantern covered by one hand. She is checking on a neighbour who has been ill. Her skirt darkens where the rain strikes and clings to her legs. At the neighbouring door, she knocks 3 times. The door opens just enough for yellow light to spill across her face. A hand reaches out, pulls her in, and the door closes. Care travels quietly in storms. It does not require a headline. At another house, a family moves furniture away from a leaking wall. The youngest child carries a cushion with grave importance. A boy drags a chair that is much too heavy for his size. His father lets him help, because useless help is sometimes emotionally necessary. The mother folds a rug and lifts it onto a table. Water has begun sneaking under the back door in thin, shining lines. They press rags against it, then more rags. Their hands smell of old cotton and floor dust turned damp. The children think this is unusual, perhaps exciting, perhaps annoying. The adults feel the shape of concern becoming harder to ignore. Still, nobody says catastrophe. That word remains outside, waiting with the wind. You stand in the middle of a street and listen. The city's sounds have changed from evening routine to collective adjustment. Hammering appears here and there. Voices rise against gusts. Doors slam. Horses shift. Gutters pour. And windows shiver. Rain fills the spaces between all other noises until silence seems impossible. Yet beneath the noise, sleep still approaches many houses. Bodies grow tired, lamps burn low. Children's heads sink into pillows despite thunder and shaking frames. The mind cannot remain fully afraid for endless hours. It slips, returns, slips again. Nightfall has done its ancient work. It has made the world smaller, darker, and more dependent on touch. You feel for railings, door frames, pockets, matches, blankets, and familiar hands. A strange softness enters the scene, even as danger strengthens. People become more tender when the weather grows less polite. They share umbrellas, pass lanterns, knock on doors, and call across fences. They misjudge things, of course. They also love one another in practical ways. At last, the city's lamps appear fewer through the rain. Some are turned down deliberately, some vanish behind shutters, some blur until they look like stars tracked near the ground. Galveston settles uneasily beneath the storm's widening hand. Shopkeepers finish their checks, nurses continue their rounds, and watchmen keep listening. Families gather near centre rooms, away from rattling glass and dripping edges. Water touches thresholds, wheels, steps, and low yards with quiet persistence. The Gulf is no longer merely scenery beyond the city. It has entered conversation, then streets, then thought. You breathe in damp darkness and taste salt behind your teeth. The night presses close around every wall. Somewhere, a clock strikes, but the sound is nearly swallowed. Rain answers in its place. You shelter inside as rain claims the roof with patient, growing strength. It no longer taps or murmurs as it did during gentler hours. Now it drums, rolls, splashes, and gathers itself into heavy sheets. The ceiling above you becomes a field of sound. Each shingle receives its blow, then passes the message downward. You sit in a room where lamplight trembles against damp wallpaper. The air smells of kerosene, wet pine, old plaster, and wool blankets. A towel lies pressed beneath the window sash, already dark with water. The floor feels slightly cool through the soles of your feet. Outside, the wind runs along the side of the house like searching hands. It finds every crack. It has excellent manners for entering poorly, which is to say, none. A shutter bangs somewhere above you, loose enough to protest each gust. A man stands on a chair to secure the upper latch. His wife holds the chair steady, her fingers tight around the worn back. He reaches, misses once, and says something politely unhelpful under his breath. The latch catches at last with a hard little snap. Everyone in the room hears it. Everyone feels better for about 7 seconds. Then the next gust shakes the wall, and comfort must be renegotiated. A little girl sits near the table, wrapping string around her fingers. She has been told to stay away from the windows. Naturally, the windows are now the most interesting objects in existence. She watches rain streak the glass in crooked silver lines. The lamp flame makes her reflection appear and vanish over her own face. She asks whether houses can fall asleep. Her mother says houses stay awake for people. That answer is lovely, and possibly made under pressure. The child accepts it, because it has the shape of a bedtime truth. Rain hammers the roof harder, then softens, then hammers again. It sounds almost intentional, as though the storm is testing moods. You move through the house and feel its small defences around you. A door is barred with a chair. A rug has been rolled from the wet corner. A bucket stands beneath a ceiling stain shaped vaguely like a rabbit. Nobody mentions the rabbit, though everyone has noticed it. Drops gather there, swell, and fall into the bucket with hollow plinks. The sound is precise. It gives the storm a clock of its own. On a shelf, dishes tremble faintly when the wind strikes from the east. A teacup walks one tiny fraction toward the edge. A hand reaches out and moves it back. Civilization, saved by inches. In Galveston, many homes are built of wood, raised for air and drainage. This design suits heat, mosquitoes, and ordinary coastal dampness. Yet wood also speaks during storms. It creaks, groans, shifts, and complains like an elderly relative denied tea. You hear floorboards flex beneath passing footsteps. You feel the frame shudder when wind leans fully against it. The house seems less like an object now, and more like a body. Its ribs are beams. Its skin is siding. Its breath is the wind forced through every seam. Inside that body, people listen and wait. Waiting is work, though nobody pays properly for it. In the kitchen, a family gathers because it feels safer than separate rooms. The stove is cold now, but it still smells faintly of ash and beans. A lantern hangs from a nail, swinging whenever the floor trembles. Its shadow moves across faces, making worry appear and disappear. A grandmother sits in a straight-backed chair with a shawl over her shoulders. Her hands rest on a cane polished by years of use. She remembers other storms, other nights of water and shaking windows, but memory does not offer exact instructions. It mostly offers comparisons, and comparisons are slippery things. She says the roof has held worse wind. Her son looks upward. He does not argue. Respect sometimes requires silence, especially when nobody is entirely sure. A boy kneels beside a box of matches and candles. He has been appointed assistant keeper of useful things. This role pleases him enormously. He checks the box, closes it, opens it again, and checks once more. His sister tells him everyone knows the matches are still there. He tells her storms can steal anything. That is childish, dramatic, and increasingly difficult to dismiss. The rain becomes so loud that voices must move closer together. People lean in to hear ordinary sentences. A question about blankets requires almost intimate attention. A request for another towel becomes a small ceremony of touch and gesture. You notice how the room has changed shape socially. Chairs are drawn inward, shoulders angle toward the lamp. Even the family dog lies close beneath the table, nose between paws. Its fur smells damp and grassy. At a sudden thunderclap, the dog lifts its head and gives one doubtful bark. Then it appears embarrassed by its own professionalism. The room relaxes slightly, grateful for anything resembling comedy. Beyond this house, roofs across the island endure the same assault. Tin roofs ring sharply beneath rain. Wooden roofs thud with deeper sounds. Slate and shingle roofs make their own mixed music of impact and runoff. Together they form a weather orchestra, conducted by pressure and darkness. Not one musician volunteered. In poorer neighbourhoods, leaks multiply faster. Families move bedding away from walls and place pots beneath drips. A mother tears an old shirt into strips to stuff along a window frame. The cloth darkens instantly, but holds back some of the water. Some is a blessed word in difficult times. A father lifts a trunk onto 2 chairs to protect its contents. Inside are clothes, letters, a marriage certificate, and a few coins in a pouch. He hesitates over the trunk before closing the lid. Paper feels fragile in a wet world. It is in a room not far away. Two sisters share one candle and a nervous silence. The candle smells of tallow and gives off a small, wavering flame. Rain sneaks down the chimney and hisses where it strikes a cold grate. One sister says the sound reminds her of frying fat. The other tells her that is a terrible comparison. They both laugh, because laughter is useful, even when poorly sourced. Their bedroom window rattles, then rattles harder, then holds. They sit on the bed with their knees drawn under their skirts. A quilt covers their feet, though the air remains warm and close. They discuss whether to sleep dressed. One says it would be sensible. The other says it would wrinkle everything. Vanity, brave little candle, still flickers at the edge of disaster. Historians still debate how widely Galvestonians understood the danger of storm surge during this night. Wind was visible, audible, and immediate inside every room. Rising water, however, could seem distant until it reached the floorboards. That difference shaped choices in kitchens, bedrooms, and halls across the city. People prepared for wind because wind was already touching them. Water moved more quietly, as though it preferred surprise. You hear that quiet in the gaps between roof thunder. Somewhere beneath the house, water begins to slap against posts. At first it could be runoff or puddles pushed by gusts. Then it returns with a rhythm too broad for a mere puddle. A man opens the back door, a cautious crack. Rain blows in so fiercely that the lamp bends and nearly dies. He slams the door and stands still, wet across the chest. The others look at him. He says there is water in the yard. That sentence changes the room. It is not yet panic. It is rearrangement. A chair moves. A trunk is lifted higher. Shoes are found and pulled on. A baby wakes and begins crying, indignant about the timing. The mother gathers the child, pressing a cheek against warm, damp hair. The smell of milk rises gently above the room's harder odours. For a moment, the baby's breathing becomes the centre of everything. Then rain resumes command. You follow the sound upward, into an attic space beneath the roof. The air is hotter here, dense with dust, cedar, and old stored cloth. Rain pounds so near that it seems to strike your skull. Boxes, broken chairs, and bundled quilts sit beneath sloping beams. A small round window leaks in a bright thread. Water runs down the wall and drips onto a stack of newspapers. The ink begins to blur. Yesterday's certainties dissolve without ceremony. A gust lifts something outside, perhaps a branch or a loose piece of trim. It scrapes along the roof with a long, dragging cry. Everyone below hears it. No one below knows what it was. Uncertainty is often louder than facts. In a sturdier brick house, the rain sounds different, but not kinder. It rattles against shutters and pours from gutters in solid ropes. The interior smells of damp masonry, cigar smoke, polished wood, and cloves. A family gathers in an interior hallway away from tall windows. Someone has brought cushions, a quilt, a lamp, and a plate of biscuits. The biscuits are ignored, which should alarm anyone who respects biscuits. An uncle tries to explain barometric pressure to two bored children. He says falling pressure means air is lifting and weather is worsening. The children listen with the expressions of people being educated against their will. Then the building shakes, and the lesson becomes more convincing. A mirror on the wall tilts slightly. The uncle stops speaking and straightens it with unnecessary dignity. Scientific explanation is admirable. So is moving away from glass. In a narrow, rented room, a seamstress listens alone. Her room smells of damp fabric, thread, lamp smoke, and a little peppermint. She has placed her sewing machine near the wall and covered it with cloth. The machine is valuable, almost companionable, and extremely bad at swimming. She sits on the bed, fully dressed, boots beside her feet. Rain clatters above, and wind presses at the window with a moaning sound. She holds a letter from her sister, folding and unfolding the same crease. The paper has softened from the humidity, and her fingers. She considers going downstairs to the landlady's parlour. Then she hears voices below, chairs moving, someone calling for a lantern. She stands immediately. Loneliness may be private, but storms make privacy seem overrated. On the stairs, her hand slides along a damp banister. The wood feels slick, worn smooth by generations of tenants. A candle moves below, and the smell of wax rises toward her. When she enters the parlour, Nobody makes a speech. They simply make room. That is one of the finest sentences a room can speak. Outside, chimneys and roof lines vanish behind streaming rain. A chimney pot loosens on one house and crashes into a side yard. The sound makes a neighbour cry out, then laugh shakily once no one is hurt. A fence panel breaks free and scrapes along the mud. It stops against a tree with a dull wooden thump. The tree bends hard, leaves plastered in one direction. Tree roots grip saturated soil, and soil begins losing its patience. You smell fresh green where branches have snapped. That scent, clean and sharp, cuts through salt and mud. A quirky storm tale later told around Galveston concerns playing cards found pasted to walls and fences. Wind and water carried such light objects into strange, almost theatrical places. Some accounts may be embellished, as disaster stories often dress themselves for memory. Yet anyone watching paper fly tonight would not dismiss the possibility. A receipt whips past your window and sticks briefly to the glass. It trembles there, unreadable, then tears away into darkness. The storm is beginning to rearrange documents without permission. It is a poor clerk. Rain on roofs grows deeper as gutters fail to carry it away. Water spills over eaves in steady curtains. Porches become drums. Barrels overflow. Yards shine. And steps disappear beneath shallow sheets. Inside, more families move towards central rooms. They bring practical things first, then sentimental things when fear allows. A Bible, a wedding photograph, a pouch of coins, a child's blanket with one corner worn soft from years of fingers. Hands become busy, because still hands invite imagination. You help carry a lamp to a safer shelf. Its metal handle is warm, almost slippery with condensation. The flame sways, then steadies behind sooty glass. Light matters more when walls begin making unfamiliar noises. At the edge of the room, an older man removes his hat and listens. He has refused to show worry for hours. Now his face changes. Not dramatically, but enough. He asks whether the neighbours have moved inward from their front rooms. His daughter says she will check. He says no, then says yes, then reaches for his coat. Love and caution trip over each other in the doorway. The daughter opens it first. Wind slams rain into the room, spraying the floor and her skirt. The smell outside is astonishing, full of salt, wood, mud, and something metallic. She calls across the narrow yard. A lantern answers from the neighbouring window. Two households trade shouted questions through the storm. Most words vanish. The raised lantern says more than language. Alive. Awake. Worried. Still here. The door closes again with effort, and the room exhales together. You sit with them, while the roof bears down under rain's endless fingers. The house creaks, flexes, answers, and holds. For now, that phrase enters every thought, soft as a footstep. For now, the windows remain whole. For now, the lamp is lit. For now, the water is outside, or mostly outside. For now, by face and voice, rain keeps speaking above them. No longer a lullaby, not yet a final roar. It becomes a heavy curtain between the known world and the unseen one. Behind that curtain, the gulf is gathering itself in streets and yards. Inside, you feel the warmth of crowded breath and trembling light. You hear whispered prayers, practical orders, and one child's sleepy complaint. The roof receives the storm and translates it into sound. Every board, nail, shingle, and beam becomes part of the telling. You listen in the dimness, wrapped in damp air and human closeness. The night has narrowed to shelter, sound, and the question of what will hold. You wake because the floor is speaking in a language it never used. Not creaking now, not settling, not giving its usual sleepy complaints. Something below the boards moves with a broad, liquid strength. At first, your mind searches for gentle explanations. A barrel overturned, a gutter flooding, a leak finding the underside of the house. Then you hear a dull knock beneath the room. Wood striking wood. The sound travels upward through the soles of your feet. A lantern burns low on the table, its flame shivering behind smoky glass. The room smells of wet cotton, kerosene, frightened breath, and rising salt water. Someone whispers that the yard is gone. No one understands the sentence at first. Yards do not simply vanish. They have fences, paths, weeds, steps, and stubborn little flower beds. Yet when the door opens a narrow crack, The night shows a moving surface. Water presses against the steps and swirls around the lower porch. It catches the lantern glow and breaks it into trembling pieces. Rain strikes that surface until it looks alive with silver needles. The door closes quickly. A hand stays on the latch, as if touch alone can reason with water. Inside, everyone listens differently now. The wind is terrifying, yes, but wind has been an enemy for hours. Water changes the room, because water means entry. Water means the outside has found the floor. You feel cold dampness along one wall where a seam has failed. A thin line creeps across the boards, shining in the weak light. It moves slowly, almost politely, which somehow makes it worse. A woman kneels and presses a rag against the gap. The rag drinks, darkens, and is defeated. There is no shame in that. The Gulf has greater resources. A child asks whether the water will stop at the rug. An adult says yes too quickly. The answer hangs in the room, bright and brittle. Across Galveston, streets that carried wagons and shoes now carry fragments of lives. Boards, crates, branches, bottles, and household scraps drift through the dark. The city's low island geography has become more than a fact. It has become the floor of the story itself. Galveston rests on a barrier island, close to sea level and exposed. That truth enters through doors, crawl spaces, yards, and broken drains. It arrives without ceremony, making maps suddenly intimate. You move toward a window and look out through rain-blurred glass. The street is no longer a street. It is a black channel, restless beneath the wind. A fence top shows briefly, then disappears behind a rolling sheet of water. Something pale floats past, turns, and catches against a porch rail. It may be a chair cushion, it may be part of a door. The mind tries to name things because names make terror smaller. Not much smaller, but one does what one can. A neighbour's voice comes from the dark, stretched thin by wind and rain. The words break apart before reaching the house. You hear only help upstairs, and children. Or perhaps your mind supplies them. A man takes a lantern and moves toward the door. His wife grabs his sleeve with both hands. He looks at her, at the water, then at the faces behind them. His jaw tightens. He cannot help everyone. That knowledge lands heavily, without drama, like a soaped coat on a chair. He opens the door anyway. Wind slams the room, and rain flies sideways into the lamp glow. The lantern in his hand nearly goes dark. Water rushes over the threshold around his boots. It is warm, dirty, and full of sand. He steps out onto the porch, braces against the frame, and calls back. The current pulls at his legs immediately. The porch boards vibrate beneath him as debris knocks below. He retreats after 3 breaths, soaked through and breathing hard. The door closes with a struggle. Nobody criticizes him. Nobody could. In another house, the water has already entered more boldly. It rolls through a back room, lifting loose papers and nudging chair legs. A trunk begins to float, then tips and strikes the wall. The sound is deep, final, and ridiculous all at once. Furniture was not meant to swim. A mother lifts a baby higher on her hip and steps onto a chair. Her dress clings to her legs as water climbs around her ankles. The baby has stopped crying, which worries her more than crying would. A teenage boy gathers blankets from a low bed and throws them onto a table. His younger sister stands on a stool, holding a tin cup and a doll. She refuses to put either down. This is perfectly reasonable. When the world misbehaves, small possessions become governments. Their father shouts for everyone to move toward the stairs. His voice cracks, then steadies because it must. The stairs smell of damp wood and old dust, stirred by many hurried feet. Hands grip the banister. Feet slip once, catch, and climb. Below them, the water knocks open a cupboard door. Pots drift out like strange little boats. One spins in the current and taps the wall again and again. The sound follows them upward. Historians still argue over how quickly the storm surge rose in different neighbourhoods. Some accounts describe water appearing with shocking speed, especially near the beach. Others suggest a more gradual, terrible accumulation in lower streets. Both experiences could exist at once across the island. A storm does not behave evenly for the convenience of later explanation. It finds hollows, roads, yards, and human assumptions. Then it fills them. You step into a street where movement has become dangerous calculation. The water reaches above your ankles, then your shins in low places. It pushes hard enough to make every step a negotiation. Rain stings your face, and wind steals breath from your mouth. The smell is overwhelming now. Salt water, manure, split wood, mud, coal ash, and torn plants mixed together. The city has been stirred from beneath. A wooden box bumps against your leg and spins away. A chicken coop floats past, empty, tilted, and absurdly dignified. A rooster perches on its roof for several impossible seconds. Then the coop strikes a post, turns sideways, and vanishes into darkness. A quirky tidbit from many Galveston recollections concerns animals riding debris through floodwater. Some stories sound embroidered, because disaster invites strange little legends. Yet floodwaters do carry animals, furniture, and household goods in surreal combinations. So you leave the rooster his dignity. He may have earned it. A lantern glows ahead, swinging violently near a second-story balcony. People crowd there, calling toward another house across the current. Their words are torn into fragments, but their gestures are clear. Come up, hold on. Do not try the street. A man in the lower house climbs through a window onto the porch roof. He passes a bundle first, wrapped tightly in a quilt. For one breath, the bundle seems only cloth. Then it moves, and a child's small hand appears. The balcony group shouts encouragement that the wind nearly destroys. The man braces his knee against the roof edge and reaches back inside. Another child climbs after him, barefoot, hair plastered flat by rain. The roof is slick. The distance between houses looks much too wide. A board is pushed across from one structure to the other. It is not long enough to inspire confidence. Of course it is not. History often provides tools with insulting limitations. Still, the board becomes a bridge because no better bridge exists. One child crosses on hands and knees while adults hold both ends. The wind presses the little body sideways. Everyone watching stops breathing. Then, hands grab shoulders, pull, and the child disappears into the balcony crowd. A cry rises, half relief and half fear. The next child begins. You turn away only because another sound demands attention. Down the block, a wagon has been pushed sideways against a fence. One wheel turns slowly in the current, though no horse pulls it now. The axle groans with each rotation. A barrel strikes the wheel and bounces away. Somewhere. Glass breaks. The sound is brief and bright, quickly swallowed by the storm. Water pours through the broken opening of a storefront. Shelves inside tilt under the push of floating goods. Soap bars, paper packets, corks, and wooden scoops drift among chair legs. The smell of spices rises unexpectedly from burst containers. Cinnamon, pepper, vinegar, and brine mix with flood water. It is strangely domestic and completely wrong. The shopkeeper stands on the counter, holding a ledger above his head. His assistant shouts that they should leave it. The shopkeeper shouts back that it has accounts in it. The assistant's answer is lost, but his expression is clear. Even bookkeeping has limits. Dear sir, at last the ledger is tucked under a coat, and both men climb toward the rear stairs. Their boots splash through what was once a clean commercial floor. In a narrow alley, water funnels between buildings with greater force. You cannot see the bottom. You hear objects scraping along brick, then striking corners with hollow bangs. The wind above makes the alley howl like a pipe organ played badly. A woman leans from an upstairs window and lowers a rope. Below, a neighbour clings to a post with one arm around a small child. The rope swings wildly before reaching them. The child is tied first, clumsy knots made by trembling hands. People above pull slowly, shouting over the wind. The child rises through rain, turning once against the wall. Tiny shoes kick at empty air. Then arms seize the child and pull inward through the window. The rope goes down again. The neighbour looks smaller now without the child, and somehow more exposed. Water slams debris against the post near his hip. He catches the rope, ties it beneath his arms, and releases the post. For 2 seconds, the current claims him. Then the rope tightens. He strikes the wall, gasps, and is lifted into the dark window above. You feel the relief in your own chest, sharp as pain. These rescues are not tidy. They are improvised, wet, frightening, and full of mistakes narrowly avoided. That is how courage often looks up close. Less statue, more scrambling. Inside a crowded upper room, dozens of people listen to the water below. The room smells of wet bodies, extinguished matches, wool, fear, and lamp smoke. Children sit on beds, trunks, and the floor, wrapped in borrowed blankets. An elderly woman occupies the only chair and apologizes for taking space. Everyone tells her not to be foolish. This is one of humanity's better reflexes. A man holds the door shut at the top of the stairs. The water below has risen high enough to slap against lower steps. Each wave sends a tremor through the stairwell. You hear furniture moving downstairs, thudding and scraping in the dark. A table hits the newel post and jams there. The house shakes under wind and current together. Someone begins to pray softly. Someone else counts the children aloud. Again and again. Counting is another kind of prayer. In one corner, a young woman cradles a birdcage beneath a shawl. Inside, a small canary sits puffed and silent on its perch. The bird does not sing. No one asks it to. Its cage smells faintly of seed, feathers, and wet cloth. The woman keeps one finger through the bars, touching the perch lightly. Perhaps the bird comforts her. Perhaps she comforts the bird. Storms are not precise about emotional arrangements. A burst of wind hits the house, and every flame in the room leans. For an instant, shadows rush across the walls like thrown cloth. Then the lamp steadies. People exhale in a ragged chorus. You move in thought across the island, through many such upper rooms. Some are crowded with neighbours who barely knew one another by name. Some hold families separated from livestock, shops, kitchens, and all certainty. Some are still too low, with water already climbing the stairs. Some have no safe upstairs at all. The storm writes unequal sentences across the city. You do not need numbers to feel the cruelty of that. Still, numbers will later struggle to describe it. Thousands of lives are in danger across Galveston tonight. Buildings that seemed ordinary and useful become decisions made in wood. Which house is taller? Which wall is stronger? Which stair still holds? Which neighbour owns a rope? Survival can rest on such plain objects. That seems unfair because it is. You stand again near a window, watching the street water rise. It moves faster now, marked by streaks of foam and darker rolling shapes. A wooden door floats by, face up, as if resting after long service. A mattress turns slowly, swollen and pale. Branches rake along a fence, then wrench part of it free. The fence travels away in sections, losing all interest in property lines. The law has little influence over floodwater. A street sign twists on its post, bends, and points uselessly into rain. Directions have become ornamental. Another neighbour calls from the dark, and several voices answer at once. For a moment, the city feels like one huge room with broken walls. People cannot stop the water, but they can make sound across it. They can declare themselves present. They can call names into the storm until names return. You hear one name answered, then another. A third name receives only wind. The silence afterward is terrible. Then someone calls again, because hope is stubborn and sometimes rude. Inside the house where you began, the water reaches the first step. It brings cold around ankles, then calves. Then the room itself changes rank. Chairs are lifted onto tables. People climb higher with blankets, papers, medicines, and sleeping children. The dog is carried, despite its offended squirming. A lantern is raised to a hook near the stairs. The flame reveals water swirling through the lower hall. It carries a slipper, a spoon, a small wooden toy, and a handful of leaves. Each object turns slowly as if confused by its new career. You feel the stair rail under your palm, slick and solid. For now, it holds. Rain roars above. Water speaks below. Wind presses from every side. The house is no longer shelter in the old, simple sense. It is a raft that has forgotten how to move, and inside it, you rise with everyone else. Step by careful step, the city beneath you fills with dark, restless water. Its streets disappear, its thresholds vanish, and its familiar ground becomes current. Still, voices continue through the rain. Hands reach, lanterns lift, neighbours call across the moving blackness, refusing to let the night become silent. You remain inside a room that seems to breathe with the storm. The walls lean, recover, and lean again beneath the wind's enormous shoulder. Water moves below with a heavy, grinding sound full of hidden objects. Each impact travels through the house like a blow against a drum. You feel it in the floorboards, your knees, and your clenched hands. The lamp has been turned low to save oil. But darkness keeps advancing. It gathers in the corners, under chairs, and along the ceiling beams. The air smells of wet wool, salt water, smoke, fear, and crowded human warmth. A child sleeps against someone's lap, mouth open, hair damp against the cheek. How children sleep through terror remains one of life's stranger miracles. Nearby, an old man grips a bedpost with both hands. He is not standing for dignity now. He is standing because the room shifts enough to threaten balance. When the wind rises, everyone becomes still at once. The sound swells from raw to something deeper, something that fills the skull. No one speaks during those moments. Words feel too thin. Then the gust passes slightly, and breath returns in small, broken pieces. A woman asks whether the roof moved. Someone answers that it only sounded that way. That answer is not convincing. But kindness does not always require accuracy. The roof groans above them, answering with poor timing. A scrap of plaster falls from the ceiling and breaks on the floor. White dust floats briefly in lamplight, then disappears into damp air. You watch it settle on a folded quilt. Such a small collapse. Such a useful warning. Across Galveston, people are packed into upper rooms, halls, and public buildings. The island has become a city of vertical hope. Every staircase, attic, balcony, and roofline matters in ways no architect intended. Families who lived apart now share breath and fear in crowded places. Strangers sit shoulder to shoulder, their soaked sleeves touching without embarrassment. A mother gives another mother room for a child. A man passes a bottle of water from hand to hand. No one complains that it tastes of cork and tin. Standards have adjusted themselves. The storm, rude educator that it is, teaches priorities quickly. You move through the crowded interior of a stronger house near a corner street. People have come here because it looks taller and better built than neighbouring homes. Its central room holds trunks, blankets, shawls, candles, and frightened shoes. The floor smells of mud tracked in before the lower door was barred. A piano stands against one wall, covered with a sheet. The sheet is wet at the edges where rain sneaks from a cracked frame. Someone jokes that the piano will need tuning. No one laughs immediately. Then one person does, softly, and the room permits it. Humour is not disrespect. Sometimes humour is a handhold. Wind forces rain through the window seams in fine sprays. A young man presses his coat against one gap, using his body as weatherproofing. The coat darkens against his chest, and water runs down his sleeves. He shivers, then denies shivering when asked. A noble lie. At the centre of the room, a woman counts people beneath her breath. Her lips move as she points silently. Children, elders, neighbours, boarders, cousins, visitors. A boy no one expected. She counts again, because the number must stay real. Counting gives fear a task and keeps imagination from wandering too far. Historians still debate how many people survived by sheltering in larger buildings and crowded homes. Many accounts describe desperate movement from weaker houses into sturdier structures, yet exact paths are often difficult to reconstruct amid darkness, water, and grief. The storm did not leave tidy evidence for historians to arrange. It left splinters, memories, silences, and names spoken differently. You feel that uncertainty in every crowded room. The people inside know only their immediate world, shrinking and shaking around them. In a school building, families gather on upper floors beneath rattling windows. Desks have been pushed aside, their legs scraping loudly over boards. Children sit where lessons were taught, wrapped in quilts instead of discipline. The air smells of chalk, wet hair, candle wax, and rain-soaked clothing. A teacher moves among them, calm enough to be useful. Her hands adjust blankets, pass cups, and touch shoulders without lingering. She has no textbook for this night. Annoying, really. Schools are supposed to prepare people for things, yet her voice carries order when order is in short supply. She asks older children to help younger ones sit away from the glass. They obey with solemn importance, promoted suddenly by weather. One girl holds a slate on her knees like a shield. On it, faint arithmetic remains beneath smudges from damp fingers. Numbers survive there, ghostly and irrelevant. Below the floor, water pounds against the building's foundation and steps. The children feel the vibration and look at the teacher. She says the building is strong. Her voice does not tremble. Perhaps it should have. But mercy sometimes chooses performance. Outside, the streets are a moving darkness, full of noise. You cannot distinguish rain from spray, or wind from the sound of breaking things. The storm has braided them together until the world has one voice. A roof tears loose somewhere and scrapes along another structure. The sound is long, metallic, and almost alive. People inside flinch as though struck. Then comes a crash, sudden and final, swallowed immediately by the roar. You do not know what fell. No one does. In this darkness, imagination supplies dreadful furniture. A chimney, a wall, a porch, a whole house. The mind offers possibilities without asking permission. You grip the nearest solid thing and breathe through your mouth. Salt coats your lips. A candle guttering on a shelf gives off a greasy, bitter smell. When it goes out, the room sighs in disappointment. Another match is struck, tiny and brave, its sulphur sharp in the damp air. The flame catches, bends, steadies, and becomes a point of civilization. People look toward it as if it has made an argument. Light is persuasive in a storm. A few blocks away, a family crouches in an attic where the roof slopes low. The space is cramped, hot, and loud beyond thinking. Dust has turned to paste on beams and stored trunks. Water climbs the stair below, step by patient step. The father has brought an axe, which rests across his knees. He hopes not to use it. That hope feels thin. Attics can save people from rising water, but they can also trap them. The cruel logic of flooding offers choices that are not really choices. A boy asks why the axe is there. His father says it is for the roof, if needed. The boy nods, then studies the rafters with wide eyes. A little girl beside him holds a biscuit in both hands but does not eat. It has gone soft from dampness. She keeps it anyway. A biscuit is a plan for a future stomach. Above them, shingles lift and slap back down. The roof leaks in several places, cold drops falling onto necks and hands. Every leak seems to ask whether the house still intends to stay whole. The father listens to the water below and the wind above. He cannot fight both. Nobody can, which is extremely impolite of nature. In a nearby attic, another family has already broken through their roof. They climb onto wet shingles, crawling low to avoid being taken by wind. Rain strikes their faces so hard they can barely open their eyes. The roof surface feels slick as soap beneath palms and knees. A man anchors himself around a chimney and holds out one arm. His wife passes a child toward him through the jagged opening. The child's nightshirt clings to the small body like a second skin. For a moment, the child refuses to release the mother. Then the father's arm closes around both fear and body. The wind screams over them, flattening every word into effort. They lie there against the slanted roof, held by hands, knees, and luck. Below them, the house shakes and water surges upward. Above them, the sky offers no kindness at all. Yet the roof is higher than the room. Higher has become hope. A quirky storm story from Galveston's memory tells of household objects lodged in impossible places. Chairs appeared on roofs, quilts wrapped around poles, and signs travelled far from their shops. Some details may have grown in the telling, as stories often do. Still, the storm's power made the ordinary behave like carnival equipment. You can imagine a parlour chair sailing past a bedroom window. You can imagine someone seeing it and thinking, absurdly, that Mrs. Harris will want that back. The mind makes ridiculous notes, even during fear. It is trying to remain human. Inside a large refuge, a group begins singing very softly. Not loudly, because breath is precious and the storm owns most sound. The tune is familiar to many, though not all know the words. Those who do not know them hum. The song wavers, breaks and reforms beneath the wind. It is not pretty, it is better than pretty. It gives the room a shared pulse. An elderly man closes his eyes, not in sleep, but to listen more deeply. A young mother presses her face into her child's hair. Two teenage boys who would rather be anywhere less emotional sing under their breath. Their embarrassment has been postponed by crisis. How generous of the hurricane. The building shudders during the last line, and the song collapses into silence. Then someone starts it again. Lower. You feel the sound inside your ribs, a fragile thread across darkness. At the edge of the city, where houses stand more exposed, structures fail with terrifying speed. Wind and water work together, each making the other more destructive. A wave lifts against a wall already strained by pressure. A gust tears at the roof while current attacks the posts below. The building twists, groans, and begins surrendering piece by piece. You do not need gore to understand terror. A house coming apart in darkness is enough. People nearby hear the cracking and know what it may mean. They cannot always reach those inside. The water between homes has become too strong, too full of debris, too blind. A man tries to wade toward a cry, rope tied around his waist. 2 neighbours hold the other end from a porch. He reaches 3 steps, then 4. Then a floating beam strikes his thigh. He falls, vanishes to his shoulders, and is dragged sideways. The rope tightens, cutting into the hands of the men holding it. They pull with everything they have. He returns coughing, bruised, and furious with helplessness. The cry in the dark is gone, or hidden by wind. No one speaks. Some failures leave no language. Inside another upper room, a group listens to debris striking the walls. Each hit earns a flinch, a crate, a beam, a branch, something larger. The room tilts slightly, then settles again. People shift weight instinctively, as if bodies can balance a house. Perhaps they can emotionally. Structurally, the evidence is limited. A woman holds a rosary so tightly that beads mark her palm. Beside her, a man who does not usually pray whispers along anyway. Emergencies are not strict about membership. The rain smells different when part of the wall begins to leak openly. Fresh wood, torn plaster, and salt water rush into the room's air. The opening is stuffed with bedding. A quilt disappears into the gap. Then another. Someone says they will need those later. Someone else says later is showing no gratitude at present. That earns a faint smile in the lamplight. You feel how humour, prayer, labour, and fear mix without permission. The storm does not allow clean categories. In the business district, water smashes through warehouses and ground floors. Cotton bales swell, shift, and break their arrangements. Crates tumble against walls. Iron tools slide from benches and vanish beneath black water. The smell of wet cotton is thick, musty, and strangely sweet. Merchants' careful inventories turn into floating confusion. Years of trade, debt, planning, and ambition move in muddy currents. Galveston's commercial strength cannot argue with physics tonight. But commerce is not only money. It is the work of clerks, porters, sailors, washerwomen, carters, cooks, and shopgirls. Every damaged building contains invisible labour folded into its walls. The storm breaks architecture, and it also scatters effort. That is why loss has so many layers. Near midnight, though clocks are difficult to trust, the storm seems at its fiercest. Time itself feels battered. You cannot tell whether an hour has passed, or only a minute. Fear stretches and folds time like wet cloth. A pocket watch lies on a table, ticking, beneath a glass turned upside down for protection. Its small sound persists when the wind briefly drops between gusts. Tick, tick, tick. Such arrogance. A tiny machine continuing its schedule while the Gulf enters streets. Yet the sound comforts someone nearby. It says the world has not completely abandoned order. You listen to whenever the storm permits. In a crowded bedroom, a physician tends to an injured hand by lantern light. The cut is not dramatic, only painful and inconvenient. He washes it with water saved in a pitcher, not flood water from below. The patient winces but stays quiet, glancing toward children sleeping on the bed. The room smells of iodine, damp sheets, and wet leather. The physician wraps the hand with torn linen and ties it firmly. He has no office here, no neat table, no calm morning light. He has knees, a lamp, and someone else's bureau for a work surface. Care adapts. That is one of its better qualities. Outside, another crash shakes the room, and the patient instinctively reaches with the bandaged hand. The physician catches the wrist gently. "Not that one," he says. Practical tenderness. 4 words long. You move toward a window where shutters have partly torn away. Through the gap, you see only pieces of the world. Foam streaks across darkness at street level. Lantern light swings from an upper porch. The section of roof moves slowly in water, then turns and breaks apart. Rain flies sideways so thickly it resembles smoke. Somewhere a bell rings. perhaps torn loose and struck by debris. Its sound is irregular, mournful, and quickly lost. You press your hand against the wet sill. The wood trembles under your fingers. There is no clear boundary now between house and storm. The outside enters as sound, spray, pressure, smell, and fear. The inside answers with voices, hands, blankets, songs, and stubborn flame. You realize the night is not only a disaster of weather, it is a test of closeness. Who can reach whom? Who has space? Who has rope? Who opens a door? Who makes room on a bed, a stair, a roof, a table? The storm's pressure is measured in more than air. It presses on every bond people have built among themselves. Some bonds fail. Many hold with astonishing strength. The room shudders again, and everyone gathers closer without instruction. Shoulders touch, hands search for hands. A child wakes, sees familiar faces, and closes her eyes again. The lamp flame bows low, then rises. Below, water strikes the stair with a steady, heavy pulse. Above, the roof moans but remains. Around you, Galveston holds through midnight, house by house, breath by breath. No one knows what the city will become by morning. No one can see beyond the next gust, the next cry, the next surge. So you stay inside the narrow circle of light. You listen, you hold, you wait while wind, water, fear, and hope press together in the dark. You sense the storm changing before anyone dares to name it. Not ending, not kindly leaving, not apologizing like a decent guest. The wind still roars against the walls, and water still moves below. Yet something inside the violence loosens, just slightly, like a knot wet with rain. The hardest gusts come farther apart now, leaving strange hollows between them. In those hollows, smaller sounds return. A child breathing, a match striking, a board knocking in water, someone whispering a name into the dark, then listening for an answer. The room remains crowded, damp, and full of aching bodies. People sit where they can, knees touching trunks, elbows pressed against walls. The air smells of wet wool, cold lamp smoke, salt, mud, and exhaustion. A woman leans against a bed frame with a sleeping child across her lap. Her arms have gone numb, but she does not move them. Some burdens become too precious to set down. Near the window, a man listens with his head tilted slightly upward. His face has the blank intensity of someone measuring survival by sound. He waits through one gust, then another. He says the wind is shifting. Nobody answers quickly. A shift could mean mercy, or it could mean another direction of attack. Storms are very poor at explaining themselves. Rain still enters through seams around the shutters. It runs down the wall in crooked paths and gathers at the baseboard. A bowl set beneath one leak is full and overflowing. No one has energy to empty it. The overflow joins the water already spreading thinly across the floor. Your stockings, shoes, or bare feet feel the cold damp creep around them. A lamp on a shelf burns with a small blue edge at the flame. The oil is low. The flame trembles, recovers, then lowers again, as if growing sleepy too. You feel the room watching it. Light has become company. When it fades, the dark seems ready to step closer. A boy lifts the lamp carefully and turns the wick down with serious fingers. His hands shake, but the flame steadies. He looks older than he did when the night began. That happens sometimes during disasters. Children are given hours that weigh like years. Across Galveston, the city lies hidden beneath darkness, rain, and moving water. No broad view exists for the people inside it. They possess only fragments, framed by windows, doorways, stairwells, and roof gaps. A lantern seen across a flooded street. A shout answered from somewhere unseen. A roofline still standing against the grey-black sky. A silence where a familiar house once made sound. Before dawn, knowledge comes in pieces too sharp to hold. You look through a broken shutter and see the world in brief flashes. Rain runs in sheets, but the water below appears less frantic here. It still carries boards and branches, yet the current sometimes hesitates around obstacles. The surface lifts, drops, and swirls around submerged fences. A chair leg protrudes from the flood, like a thin, ridiculous mast. Beside it floats a framed picture, face down and turning slowly. The picture bumps a post, backs away, then returns as if confused. Objects still behave with eerie independence. Human possessions have become night travellers. A mainstream historical fact waits beneath this dim view. The 1900 Galveston hurricane became the deadliest natural disaster in United States history. That knowledge belongs to the larger record, not to this dark room. The people here cannot count such loss. They count those near enough to touch. That is the only number the body can bear before morning. Someone asks for water, and a cup is passed carefully through the room. The cup smells faintly metallic, like tin and old rain barrels. Each person takes a small sip, then gives it onward. No one drinks greedily. Need has its own etiquette when everyone can see everyone else's face. A woman tries to stand and winces when her ankle protests. She sat cramped too long on the floor beside the bed. Two hands reach out immediately, steadying her before she asks. No speeches, just hands. In another part of the city, people wait in the church upper room. The pews below may be surrounded by floodwater or filled with debris. Upstairs, families sit close beneath a ceiling darkened by moisture. The air carries candle wax, wet leather, unwashed fear, and old hymnals. A minister speaks quietly, not preaching now, just naming small things. He says the building still stands. He says everyone should keep together. He says morning will come. That last statement is bold, scientifically sound, and emotionally necessary. A girl asks whether morning can find them through the storm. Her older sister says morning finds everybody eventually. It is a beautiful answer. It is also not completely true, and everyone knows it. Still, the words settle softly over those who hear them. Sometimes, comfort is not a map. Sometimes it is only a blanket placed over the facts. Outside the church, the wind tears at a loose piece of metal. It shrieks, falls, and lands somewhere with a splash. Everyone flinches, then waits. The building holds. They breathe again. Historians continue to debate details of individual survival accounts from this night. Some stories were written immediately, while others changed across years of retelling. Memory, under trauma, can preserve astonishing truth and blur practical sequence. This uncertainty does not make the suffering less real. It simply reminds you that the storm shattered more than timber. It shattered the order in which people could remember. In a crowded attic, a man presses one ear to the floorboards. He is listening for the water's level below, as if the house were a patient. The sound is lower than earlier, or perhaps only less forceful. He cannot be sure. Beside him, his daughter holds a candle stub in a saucer. Wax pools around the base, soft and cloudy. The attic smells of damp rafters, old quilts, wet dust, and candle smoke. A trunk has been pushed beneath a roof leak to catch water. It was meant to protect family clothes. Now it has been promoted to plumbing. History is full of career changes. The little girl who kept the biscuit has finally fallen asleep. The biscuit remains in her hand, softened beyond hope. Her brother carefully takes it before it crumbles into her sleeve. Then he places it beside her on a dry scrap of cloth. Even useless food deserves respect tonight. Below, something heavy shifts against the wall, then drifts away. The house sighs with that movement. Everyone hears it and does not speak. You move in thought toward the streets, where the storm's voice has lowered but not vanished. The roar has broken into separate sounds. Rain pouring from broken roofs, water sloshing through rooms, loose boards tapping against walls, wires snapping or humming in the wind, animals calling once, then stopping. Now and then, a human voice crosses the darkness. It may be calling for help. It may be calling to check on someone. It may be only a sound made because silence feels worse. The difference is not always clear. A lantern appears at an upstairs window, moves left, then right. Another lantern answers from across the water. Two small lights make a conversation no storm can fully censor. You feel how fragile and stubborn that is. At a refuge on higher ground, or what passes for higher ground here, people begin sorting themselves. Children are placed against interior walls, away from shattered glass. Elders are given chairs, boxes, or folded blankets. Injured hands are wrapped again. Faces are counted again. The same names are spoken. Sometimes with relief, sometimes with dread. A woman realizes she has been holding another family's child for an hour. The child sleeps against her shoulder, trusting whoever is warm. She looks for the mother in the crowded room and sees her nearby, helping someone else. Their eyes meet. The mother nods once, too tired for gratitude in full sentences. The woman nods back. Shared survival creates arrangements too simple for paperwork. In one corner, an older man tells a small story to keep children calm. It is about a mule that once refused to cross a bridge. The mule was right. Naturally, mules often contain irritating amounts of judgment. The bridge washed out the next day, he says, and the children listen. They like the mule immediately. The story has nothing to do with the storm, and everything to do with enduring it. A quirky tidbit from the wider history of disasters is that small comic memories often survive beside tragic ones. People remember a floating hat, a stubborn animal, or a ruined supper with startling clarity. Such details may seem disrespectful from far away. Up close, they are proof the mind is still alive. A girl smiles at the mule story. The smile lasts 1 second. 1 second counts. The sky beyond the windows remains nearly black, but its darkness begins thinning at the edges. You cannot see dawn yet. You sense only that the night has grown less complete. Rain still falls, though its rhythm changes from assault to exhaustion. The wind comes in long, tired pushes instead of constant fury. It is like listening to a giant creature breathe after running too far. No one trusts the change. Trust must be rebuilt, and the storm has done poor work earning it. Still, bodies respond before minds agree. Shoulders lower slightly, hands loosen their grip. A child turns over and sighs in sleep. Someone says they think the worst may be passing. The words enter the room carefully, like a cat entering a room after breaking something. Everyone watches them. No one embraces them at once. A woman replies that storms can return. Another says this one has already taken enough. The room accepts both statements. Truth can sit in more than one chair. At a damaged boarding house, water stands halfway up the stairs. Guests occupy the upper landing, bedrooms, and a narrow hallway. The landlady has somehow kept a ledger, a teapot, and 3 blankets dry. This is nearly heroic. Especially the teapot. She moves among people with the authority of someone who owns the roof above them. Her hair has fallen loose, and her dress is muddy to the knees. She tells a young man to stop apologizing for bleeding on the floor. The floor, she notes, has suffered larger insults tonight. He laughs weakly, then lets her tie linen around his arm. The hallway smells of damp plaster, blood, tea leaves, and extinguished lamp smoke. A guest asks whether anyone knows the time. Someone produces a watch that stopped hours ago after getting wet. The stopped hands show an hour that no longer matters. Time has become weather, light, breath, and waiting. In a home where the lower walls have begun to fail, people move onto the roof. The rain is colder there, and the wind still tries to flatten everyone. They lie low along the slope, gripping shingles, chimney bricks, and each other. The roofing cuts into palms and knees. Saltwater spray hits their faces from below, carried by the wind. The city around them appears as shapes, not streets. A rooftop here, a tree crown there, a dark gap where nothing reflects. The horizon remains invisible. One man raises his head too high and is ordered down by 3 voices. He obeys immediately. Pride has been washed clean out of the situation. Beside him, his wife keeps one hand on his coat and one on their son. The son has stopped asking questions. Sometimes that silence is not bravery. Sometimes it is simply the body conserving itself. A fragment of wood floats near the roof edge, then catches and knocks repeatedly. Tap, tap, tap. The sound becomes maddening in its neatness. The man reaches toward it, then thinks better of the idea. Congratulations. Wisdom. You arrived damp, but welcome. In the city's medical spaces, caregivers continue by dim light and instinct. Bandages run low, dry cloth becomes precious, and clean water must be guarded. Nurses and physicians work while not knowing whether their own homes still stand. That thought sits behind their eyes but rarely reaches their hands. Hands must remain useful. The room smells of antiseptic fading beneath wet clothes and muddy shoes. A nurse warms a child's hands between her own. The child asks if the rain is tired yet. The nurse says yes. Perhaps it is. Outside, rain continues, but softer. The child considers this answer and decides to believe it for the moment. Belief can be temporary. Temporary belief can still help. You return to a flooded street where dawn waits somewhere behind the clouds. Water covers the road, the yard, the path, and the lower steps. It has made the city into a single dark surface broken by wreckage. A wardrobe door floats past, polished side upward, reflecting a dim greyness. A dead lamp lies beside it, chimney cracked and metal blackened. A rocking chair is lodged in a tree, moving slightly whenever wind strikes. There is the strange, fringe-like image people will later tell, half unbelievable and fully seen. A chair in a tree, a domestic thing perched where no domestic thing belongs. This is how the storm rearranges memory. It makes symbols without asking permission. Somewhere nearby, a rooster actually crows. The sound is ragged, late, and completely inappropriate. It is also magnificent. Several people hear it and begin crying. Not because of the bird alone. The crow means the world still contains mourning habits, even absurd ones. The eastern sky turns from black to a reluctant charcoal. No sunlight breaks through. Only a slow weakening of darkness. Shapes grow edges. Edges become broken fences, leaning walls, split roofs, and tangled wires. People do not want to look, yet looking becomes necessary. You feel the terrible pull of it. To survive the night is not the same as understanding it. Understanding waits outside with mud on its hands. Inside the rooms, people prepare to see what remains. They wrap shawls around shoulders, find shoes, lift children, and check the injured. Some whisper thanks, some say nothing, some call names again into spaces where answers may or may not come. The storm's loudest voice has faded, but it has left behind many smaller voices. Water dripping through ceilings, wood settling under strain, someone sobbing behind a closed door, someone laughing once because a lost hat has appeared on a lampstand. The human mind, loyal fool, continues noticing details before dawn's full light. Galveston hangs in a grey pause between terror and recognition. The air feels cooler now, washed raw and full of salt. Your skin is damp, wrinkled, and chilled where clothing clings to it. Your ears ring with the memory of wind even when gusts lessen. The silence is not true silence. It is what remains when the roar steps back. You stand with the survivors in that uneasy hush, surrounded by darkness thinning slowly. No one knows the whole city yet. No one knows the whole loss. They know breath, touch, names, wounds, water, and the fragile fact of standing. Morning gathers itself behind torn clouds. The gulf, exhausted and immense, still moves through the streets below. You step into morning, and morning does not look like morning should. Light spreads slowly across Galveston, grey, strained, and almost unwilling to land. The sky hangs low above the island, torn into clouds that still drip rain. The air is cooler now, but it feels raw against your skin. Salt dries on your lips, and grit clings to your wet sleeves. Every breath carries the smell of mud, splintered wood, seaweed, smoke, and ruin. The Gulf has crossed the boundary people trusted for generations. It has entered homes, shops, churches, hospitals, alleys, and carefully kept rooms. Now it withdraws in places, leaving behind what it has rearranged. You stand in water that covers the road in broken, shining patches. Beneath the surface, your shoe touches something hard, then something soft. You move slowly. Everyone moves slowly now. Speed belongs to the storm, and the storm has spent it cruelly. Around you, familiar streets have lost their grammar. Fences point nowhere. Porches lean open like tired mouths. Roofs lie where roofs should never be. A bed frame rests near a tree, tangled with rope, straw, and torn fabric. A sign from a shop hangs crooked on a fence far from its doorway. The letters remain readable, which feels absurdly cheerful. The city has not vanished, but it has become difficult to recognize. Recognition arrives piece by piece, and each piece asks for courage. You hear people before you see them. Voices call names through damp air, hoarse from wind and fear. Some calls are answered quickly. Some are answered after a pause that feels much too long. Some are not answered at all. Those silences stand in the street like walls. A woman climbs down from a porch roof with help from two neighbours. Her bare feet touch a chair first, then a crate, then muddy ground. She holds a child wrapped in a blanket against her chest. The child's hair smells of smoke, rain, and sleep. Someone asks whether she is hurt. She shakes her head, then begins crying, because the question has unlocked her. No one tells her not to cry. Morning has no patience for pretending. Nearby, a man stands where his front room used to be. One wall remains, holding a shelf with 3 plates still stacked neatly. The rest of the house has opened itself to the sky. He stares at the plates. Perhaps he cannot yet look at anything larger. A neighbour places a hand on his shoulder and says his name once. The man nods without turning. Grief often begins with an object too small for the disaster around it. A cup, a shoe, a photograph, a plate that stayed when almost nothing else did. You continue along a street where debris lies in long ridges. The storm has piled boards, beams, doors, mattresses, branches, and household goods together. These piles are not random in feeling, though water made them without thought. They look like the city's private life, gathered into public heaps. A sewing basket spills thread across the mud. A child's slate lies cracked beside a bent spoon. A prayer book rests open, its pages swollen and unreadable. The smell of wet paper rises faintly when you pass it. A rooster steps from beneath a broken crate and shakes himself with authority. Of course he does. Some creatures emerge as if personally offended by catastrophe. A tired boy sees the rooster and laughs once, then covers his face. The laugh and the sob arrive together. Neither is wrong. Galveston's deadliest loss is beyond comprehension in these first hours. The hurricane of 1900 will be remembered as the deadliest natural disaster in United States history. Thousands of people were killed, though exact numbers remain uncertain. Some estimates place the loss around 6,000, while others reach even higher. Historians still argue over the final count because records, bodies, families, and neighborhoods were scattered by the storm. Numbers try to serve memory, but they cannot replace names. They cannot show a hand reaching from an upstairs window. They cannot show a lamp protected through the night. They cannot show a neighbour making room when there was almost none. So you let the numbers remain solemn, and you keep walking carefully. At a church, people gather in the yard and on the steps. The building is damaged, but part of it still stands. Its bell hangs at an angle, wet rope dragging through mud. The air smells of soaked hymnals, torn plaster, candle wax, and crushed grass. A minister speaks quietly with several families, moving from face to face. He has no large speech ready, which is merciful. Large speeches would be indecent this early. A woman kneels near a bench, pressing both hands over her eyes. Another woman kneels beside her without asking any questions. That is sometimes the holiest thing available. Inside, pews have shifted, and mud lies across the floor. A hymn book has floated open against the wall. No one sings, yet the room is still listening. Near the business district, shopkeepers and labourers begin seeing the damage clearly. Warehouses have split open. Goods have soaked, scattered, or vanished into streets and water. Cotton bales lie swollen and dark, heavy with salt and mud. Barrels have burst, crates have broken, and ledgers have blurred into grey mush. The smell of wet cotton and spilled spices hangs under the morning air. Men lift boards from doorways, not yet rebuilding, only discovering entrances. One finds a cash drawer wedged beneath a stair. Another finds a portrait frame, empty of glass and picture. They exchange a look that says nothing useful can be said. Work begins anyway. It begins because standing still hurts too much. It begins because someone must clear a path. It begins because bodies know tasks before minds know meaning. A mainstream fact settles into the muddy morning. Galveston would rebuild after the hurricane with remarkable engineering ambition. The city later raised much of its grade and built a great sea wall. Those efforts changed the island's shape and its relationship with the Gulf. But none of that belongs fully to this first grey day. Not yet. Today there are soaked rooms, missing neighbours, broken streets and stunned survivors. Today there are hands pulling wreckage aside. Today there are children being warmed, wounds being cleaned, and names being written down. Future monuments begin as present exhaustion. That is not poetic enough for city brochures. But it is true. You move toward a school building where families have begun descending carefully. The stair is slick, and the children are guided down one by one. Their faces look pale in the grey light. Some carry bundles. Some carry nothing because they have nothing left within reach. A teacher stands near the doorway, counting again as each person passes. Her dress is torn at the hem and stiff with dried salt. Her voice remains calm, though her eyes keep searching the street. Chalk dust has mixed with water across the classroom floor. Desks have shifted into odd angles, as if the room held a secret argument. On one wall, the alphabet still hangs in damp strips. Letters curl away from paper. Even language looks tired. A little girl asks whether school will happen tomorrow. The teacher almost answers, then does not. That restraint may be the morning's wisest lesson. In another neighbourhood, people salvage what can be carried. A woman pulls bedding from a window and drapes it over a broken fence. It hangs there grey and dripping, smelling of salt, smoke and sleep. A man lifts a trunk whose hinges have swollen shut. Two neighbours help, though their own houses are damaged too. Help spreads because need is everywhere, and nobody can solve their own grief alone. A small boy searches the mud for marbles. His aunt tells him to leave them. He finds one blue marble anyway, and holds it up like treasure. She starts to scold him, then stops. The marble is rinsed in rainwater and placed in his pocket. Survival requires food, shelter, medicine, and sometimes a blue marble. Anyone who says otherwise has never been 5. A quirky detail from Galveston's storm memory is the strange travel of household objects. People told of pianos shifted from parlours, ships driven inland, and furniture lodged in trees. Some stories were exact, some rounded by retelling, and some impossible to check. Yet the storm's force truly made the ordinary appear dreamlike. You see that dreamlike quality now in the morning light. A rocking chair sits upside down in a garden, still gently moving. No one is pushing it, the wind has almost gone. But the chair remembers. You pass it with a shiver that is not from cold alone. In the distance, the Gulf lies grey and restless beyond the damaged city. It seems calmer now, which feels almost insulting. The same water that crossed the island returns to its vast surface. It glitters in dull light, breathing as though nothing extraordinary has happened. Nature does not offer apologies. Humans prefer stories with apologies, which is understandable. The sea offers only motion, tide, wind, and the long forgetting of waves. People must provide the remembering. That remembering begins immediately. In lists, letters, searches, and repeated accounts. Who was last seen where? Which house stood? Which roof held? Which neighbour opened a door? Memory becomes urgent because so much has been loosened. Historians still debate the balance of human error, scientific limitation, geography, and chance in the disaster. Some emphasise forecasting failures and public warning. Some point to the island's low elevation and lack of coastal defence. Others study race, class, housing, and labour to understand who suffered most. No single explanation can hold the whole storm. The past resists neatness. It has always been a poor student of our tidy outlines. You feel that resistance beneath your feet, in the mud and scattered boards. A wealthy parlour and a worker's room both broke open, but not equally. Some houses were stronger. Some families had higher places to go. Some people had transport, information, or neighbours with space. Disaster may arrive widely, but it does not land evenly. That truth sits quietly beside the morning. It does not need to shout. At a makeshift aid point, people organise food, water, cloth, and medicine. A table has been set on crates beneath a damaged awning. The awning drips steadily onto one corner, so everything is shifted away. Someone heats coffee over a small fire protected by bricks and wet boards. The smell rises dark and bitter, suddenly precious. A cup is passed to a woman whose hands shake too much to hold it. Another person wraps both hands around hers until she can drink. The coffee is probably terrible. It is also holy. A doctor examines a man's bruised shoulder and tells him to rest. The man laughs, because rest seems like a foreign country. The doctor does not argue. Doctors learn when advice is ceremonial. Still, the shoulder is wrapped, and the man sits for 5 minutes. 5 minutes counts. You find yourself near the remains of a boarding house parlour. A sofa has overturned against the wall. A framed mirror is cracked but still hanging, reflecting sky through missing boards. The landlady moves through the wreckage with a ledger under one arm. The ledger's pages are damp but not destroyed. She looks at the mirror and sees herself split into several pale versions. Her hair is wild, her face streaked, and her posture fiercely upright. She straightens a fallen chair. Then she straightens another. No one needs chairs yet, but she does it anyway. Order begins with one chair deciding to be a chair again. There is a kind of courage in that. Outside, the grey light strengthens. The rain fades to a mist that beads on skin and broken wood. You hear axes, calls, groans of lifting timber, and the splash of boots. You hear gulls returning above the shore, their cries thin and sharp. You smell salt drying on walls, smoke from small fires, and mud warming slightly. The city is wounded beyond easy language. Yet movement continues everywhere. A hand lifts a beam. A voice answers a name. A child eats a softened biscuit. A woman ties back her hair and begins searching a room. A man writes a list on damp paper, pressing hard so the pencil marks stay. Galveston is not healed. It is not close to healed, but it is moving. And movement is the first difficult prayer. You turn toward the shoreline one last time. The beach where people walked in curiosity is changed into a rough, debris-strewn margin. Sand lies in strange ridges, cut by channels and scattered with planks. The surf continues coming in, smaller now, wearing foam like torn lace. Each wave slides forward, touches wreckage, and withdraws. The sound is softer than the night's roar, but not innocent. It whispers around posts and boards, around shells and broken steps. You stand where land and water meet, feeling wet sand take your weight. The Gulf smells of salt, weed, and the deep stirred places beneath waves. It is beautiful again, which feels unfair. Beauty is not always kind. You let the wind touch your face, gentler now, moving through damp hair and tired skin. You understand that people will rebuild here, because humans return to edges. They return to rivers, mountains, forests, volcanoes, and coasts. They return because danger and belonging often share the same address. Galveston will raise itself higher, build stronger, remember selectively, and remember deeply. It will become both city and warning. A final quiet settles over the shore. Not silence, but a softer rhythm. The waves breathe in and out across the sand. Clouds drift apart in slow grey folds. Somewhere behind you, a hammer begins tapping with careful persistence. Each tap is small. Each tap says not yet finished. You carry that sound with you as the morning opens, tired and pale. Now, as the story grows softer, let your own room return around you. Let Galveston's grey morning fade into the gentle dark behind your eyes. The rain is only a memory now, distant, low, and loosening. The wind moves farther away. Crossing water you no longer need to follow. You do not have to hold the whole city in your hands. You can let the lamps dim. You can let the streets become quiet. The broken boards settle into mist, and the voices grow tender with distance. Every name returns to the hush where history keeps its most careful candles. The Gulf breathes slowly beneath a sky washed clean of its hardest anger. Its waves lift and lower, patient as sleeping breath. The island rests in the long work of remembering and repair, and you rest too, safe inside the present, wrapped in ordinary walls. Feel the sheet against your shoulder. Feel the pillow cool beneath your cheek. Let the last smell of salt become only clean night air. Let the old storm move away across the dark water. No more counting gusts. No more watching thresholds. Only a soft shore, a faint lamp, and a calmer tide. The rain has passed into story. The story has passed into quiet, and quiet, at last, is allowed to stay. Sleep well.